Homeworthy. I'm Betsy Deiseroth. Welcome to my home in Pittsburgh. Come on in, I can't wait to show you around.
Hello Homeworthy, my name is Mel Macpherson. This is my home in Mullumbimby, Australia. Welcome to Longfield, come on in.
Hello Homeworthy, I'm Martin Bourne. This is my house in upstate New York. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Betsy Deiseroth. I'm an interior designer. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Welcome to my home. When we first saw this house 25 years ago, I was looking for a project to do, and it certainly was a project. It needed a lot of work. It had been owned by an older couple who hadn't done much with it, and it gave me a lot of opportunity to build our own kitchen, build our own living space, and it was in our neighborhood. We lived just 2 streets over prior to, and it was much smaller than our previous house, which I wanted. The other house was too large. I wanted to make a cozy cottage type house, and I got that. The house is interesting in that I consider it 3 different houses. It was originally built in the mid-1800s as a farmhouse. It was very small, just 3 rooms with a small upstairs. Sometime during the 1950s, an addition was built onto it, which was primarily the living room and a small den. And then in the 2000s, when we purchased the home, we added on a kitchen and living space and a screened-in porch. This is our front entry hall. It was not always a front entry hall. It was originally a den when we purchased this house. It had a loft that came halfway across the room with a small set of steps that went up here. There was also a window that looked into the living room that was a little odd. And this French door was a sliding glass door. I wanted, when we were redoing this house, to be able to see through to the backyard from the front door, and I always wanted a center hall table. So I'm really happy to have that. When we took out the loft, we made the ceiling a tray ceiling, and I think it worked well. And we also wanted the floors to unite between the addition that we were building, which were dark floors, to the blonde floors that were already in the living room. So I had an artist do a checkerboard pattern of the 2 different color stains for the floor to make a transition between the 2 rooms. I bought this wooden urn in Washington, D.C. on a trip from an antique store. I loved it. However, the problem with it is that it's all solid, so it's very shallow here, so I have to be careful with what I can put in it. I can't do a lot of flowers, so I usually put branches in it. And I collect my branches from the yard. We usually have a flowering crabapple tree. This year did not bloom, and I put those in there, so I had to use viburnum this year to put in there. And I collect decorating coffee table books, and I have quite a few of them, and this is some of them here. And this is just a folding table with a skirt on it that I like. My husband loves to collect Harry's rugs, so we have 4 of them, and this is one of them. It's the perfect size for this hallway. But my favorite part of this room are my brand new pillows. I'm so excited. I just got these. Countin and Tout reintroduced their Setter 2 fabric, and I absolutely had to have it. I think this is the most charming fabric. I didn't need 2 more pillows here, but there was no way I was going to miss this fabric, so I got their minimum yardage of 2 yards and had these pillows made. The good thing about them is that they will work in any room of my house, so I'm not sure quite where I'm going to put them yet, but I think they look great here for now, and I just think the dog on it is so sweet. The couch is an antique that we bought in an antique store. It's just an old leather sofa. It's pretty worn and beat up, but it's a good place. We don't have a coat closet in this house, so typically that's where everyone throws their coats when they come over. And we have 4 architectural prints that we put above it, and some deer sconces that I like. We light those candles when we're entertaining. They're not electrified. The chandelier, we also found at an antique store. It was a broken mess. The arms were all broken off, and we sent it to a restorer here in Pittsburgh, and he restored it. And we brought that from our previous home as well, and it fit perfectly in here too. We collect Chinese export porcelain, and we're running out of wall space, and we just recently decided to hang these platters above the door. We're a little concerned that when the door slams that the platters would fall. However, so far so good. We're in good shape so far. They have not fallen yet, but I think that they look really nice up there. In the corners and the sides of the room, we have a pair of tables, a pair of lamps, a pair of mirrors, and a pair of paintings. We like symmetry here. I also have a collection of cast iron dog door stops. I'd like to collect them. I don't chase them, just whenever I'm out and about and I see them, I'll grab one of them. I think they're really cute. We have 3 log-burning fireplaces in this house, so I keep baskets of wood around so we don't have to walk outside every time that we need to add more logs to the fire. It also is great for hiding the outlet behind it. I have a zebra stool, just a place to stack more books. And I also have an armillary that I like. I just think it's an interesting decorative piece. I also have one out on the patio. It just spoke to me when I saw it at a store somewhere. I've put the burlap wallpaper on the walls. I thought that this would be a nice transition because it's a brown color. It goes with the wallpaper that's in the kitchen. It's really versatile. I love burlap. I think it's such a natural, organic fabric. I use it for tablecloths a lot, and I just wanted to put it on the walls. It gives it some texture and depth, and it goes with everything. It's a perfect neutral. This is a hallway that kind of connects the front entrance hall to the dining room to the kitchen. And again, this wallpaper I chose because it has this brown in it that's the color of the burlap in the front hall. So I think it's a very nice transition from the front entrance hall into the kitchen. We also have a collection of mushroom prints because the name of my husband's catering company is the Fluted Mushroom. So it's kind of a nod to that, and they're old prints, and it's a nice way to walk into the kitchen from the foyer. I started as a designer somewhat reluctantly. I was just designing my own houses, and a lot of my friends were asking me for help. I was happy to help them initially, but it started taking up way too much of my time, and I became very resentful. My husband said, well, you have to start charging them, which also made me feel awkward. But I had a friend who said, well, I can do the business part of it, and you won't have to deal with that. So that's how I came to be an interior designer. I don't market myself, and I still only work for friends, and it's word of mouth. And I'm happy doing it that way. If you follow me, we'll go into the living room. This living room was built in the 1950s as an addition onto the original mid-1800s house. It has a vaulted ceiling and beams in it. And when we first purchased the house, these were all sliding glass doors as well, and I replaced them with French doors just because I think they're much prettier. The mantle is also interesting because when we first arrived here, it was big river rocks painted glossy white and did not have a mantle on it at all. So we stuccoed over the rocks and painted it all green, and then purchased an antique mantle to go on it. And it is a log burning fireplace that we use often. One of the reasons that we purchased this house was this rug belonged to a family friend of my husband's, and they were selling their home, and he had always loved this rug and wanted to buy it. Unfortunately, at our old house, there was not a place for it. When we came and looked at this house and walked into this room, I said, well, we have to buy it because it has a place for your rug. So the whole room is decorated and built around this rug, which he had long admired as a child at his family friend's home. When I looked at this rug, I thought the most natural fabric to go with it, which is my favorite fabric, is mattress ticking. I think it's a wonderfully versatile fabric, mainly because it's durable and it's incredibly inexpensive. So I made the draperies out of mattress ticking. That's only like $8 a yard. I put it on the back of these French chairs that are covered in a blue flannel, and I covered the wingback chair in it and did pillows in it. I added some trim to the draperies to dress them up a little bit. These windows are very, very short, and this is a good decorating trick, I think. I made the Roman shades. The bottom of the Roman shades is where the top of the window is. So I elevated them up to make these windows look longer, to be more in scale with the room, because they were out of proportion with the room because of the front porch that's on the house. We collect China trade paintings of boats that sailed from Hong Kong to America with mostly porcelain on them, and I got tea and everything that would come from China. We have 3 of them here, and there are also 3 in another part of the house. But I think they're very pretty, and I think they look great with the mattress ticking as well. We also have a collection of tea caddies that are tortoiseshell tea caddies. My husband gets a little carried away with it, so we have stopped our collection, but they sit on this chest, and they're all different sizes and kind of shapes, and that's another collection that we have. I collect also small biscuit boxes that are silver plated, and I often use these to put flowers in when we're having a party, a more formal party. I will use them for flowers. I just think they're very cute and sweet, and I like to imagine people serving their cookies in them. This is an old writing desk. I love writing desks. I love that the sides go in and out and slide. I like the leather that is on them. We have 3 of them in this house. We often sit here, and it's great to look out at the garden when we're on phone calls, if we have to make a Zoom call or do any kind of work. We like to sit here. It's a very comfortable open space. You can see what's happening on both sides of the house, which makes it a really great place to be. This is a painting that is adjacent to the ship paintings that we collect, in that it's a view of the Hong in Hong Kong, with all of the different countries with their warehouses where their ships would come in to collect their wares before they would travel across the world to deliver them. This armoire is also very interesting. It's an old piece of furniture, and I like it because inside it hides a TV. And when these chairs swivel around, and when people want to watch different things at different times in our house, they'll often swivel these chairs around, and they have this TV in here, and I like that it's hidden. And I think it's just a very pretty piece of furniture. These sconces are new. They're not antiques, but I just always like them because I like these little tiny lights that are on them and the cutest little tiny lampshades on them. I think they just are really sweet, and I have a pair of them. Everything in this house is a pair. We're very into symmetry and pairs of things, which takes us to these chairs. We're just a pair of little pull-up chairs that have a cute little landscape painting on them that I had upholstered in an animal print. I think every room should have an animal print in it. It doesn't have to be big. You don't have to do the whole room in it, but just one small piece, I think, really elevates a room and makes it a lot more sophisticated. I also have a collection of Staffordshire figurines. This is Napoleon, who I like. I just think he looks dashing, and I think he matches the colors in here perfectly. The rest of my collection is ones that do not have any of the colored paint on them. They're just plain white, and but I certainly like the figurines a lot, and I just think he looks great. One of my favorite art forms is portraiture. I like it a lot. I love visiting the National Portrait Gallery. I think the way, before photography, that artists were able to capture people is fascinating. So I like to collect them. I have no idea who this man is, but I think he's very handsome, and I think he looks great presiding over this room. And those little dogs in front of him are also Staffordshire China. The colors of the prints on the wall kind of match everything too. I really like blue and green, and I tend to gravitate towards things that are muted blues and greens, and I think that's kind of what this house is. And I think that's what is important to making the flow of a house work. When you stick with the same color scheme, not every room has to be the same color, and it can be different colors, but if you stick in the same kind of family, blues and greens and browns, which is what I've chosen, everything works everywhere. And I think that these prints are an example of that. They're muted, and they reflect the colors that are in the room. We raised 3 children here, and it worked perfectly for that. The grandchildren come and visit now. We entertain friends a lot, and it's kind of just the primary part of our life. It's where our whole life is based, and we enjoy having people over and using the house, and it is very well used. There are a lot of people through here, and everyone seems to enjoy it, and that makes us happy. The house also serves as, I guess, a warehouse or a storage unit for all. My husband particularly is a collector. I think that's comes with being a Taurus. And he gets very focused on his collections, and that's important to us too. And we like living with them and being surrounded by them. This is our patio. This was not here when we bought the house. We added the pergola, which has climbing roses and wisteria on it, which unfortunately are not in bloom yet. We added this table, which I based on the books of Peter Mayle of his life in Provence. He had a big square table that was 5 feet by 5 feet like this, and it is perfect for dinner parties of 8 people. Because everyone can talk to each other. The only problem with it is that you cannot move it. It is so heavy that it's stuck there forever. I also have, I just noticed here, and there she is, a mourning dove in her nest up in our pergola. We entertain out here quite often in the summer. When the sun sets in the west here, it makes great light here, and it's very comfortable. It's not too hot like it is at midday. And it's also flows right into our kitchen. So from our kitchen, you can walk out here, and it also flows through to the living room. So that was one of the concerns that we had, or one of the things that we wanted when we were putting our addition on this house, was that we wanted it, because we entertain so much, we wanted to have an easy flow. So it does make a large circular pattern, which enables us to accommodate a lot of people for parties. I just look at it from the interior most of the time, but we only use it for dinner in the evenings. And I just started growing this ivy a couple of years ago. I always wanted to have a house covered in vines, like Madeline had. I think it's really charming. Everyone says I'm absolutely crazy to do it because it'll ruin the house, but I figure that'll be after I'm gone. So I want to enjoy having the ivy on the side of the house. If you follow me, we'll then go into our big room. This is the room that we call the big room, for lack of a better word for it. We didn't know what to call it because it was always the screened-in porch. When we first put this addition on the house, which consisted of the dining room, the kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and this was a screened-in porch. About 6 years ago, I would think, we decided to enclose it. So we took out all of the screens and we added these windows. We also added some trim around the top and some extra framing between the windows, and put in a French door instead of the screened-in doors. This room does not have any air conditioning or heat other than radiant heat in the floor. Luckily we did that when we built it because it is flagstone. However, with the fireplace and the fans, the room stays warm and cool enough for us to use it all year round, and we really do. We primarily live in this room now. I know that the furniture is a little out of scale, But I did that on purpose because I wanted the chairs to be really comfortable, to be able to watch TV, watch movies, and just be a hangout space. And it works perfectly for that. We already had the tray ceiling in it, but I added that this is Tebow grass cloth. I've always liked this one. I like the light color of it. And again, with the browns and the blues and the greens, it mirrors the rest of the house in the transition from room to room. And also the Harry's rug, which is a new purchase for us. We just got this one at Christmas this year. We had another one, but our rug dealer got this one in. And we'd always wanted to upgrade, and we were delighted to find this, particularly since it fit perfectly. And it's much more muted than the one that we had before. And we're really pleased with that. But again, the rugs are sort of always my starting point when I'm decorating. When we closed in the screened-in porch, we also had our friend, who is a cabinet maker, make this bookcase. I designed it because I needed a space to put all of my decorating books in it. You can see I have quite a bit of them, and they fit perfectly in here. I also decided to mirror the center part, top and bottom, so that it would reflect the trees in the backyard. I just think that mirrors add a lot of light and vibrancy to a room. So I'm happy I did that. I also hung this mirror on it. This mirror I have at every one of my children's homes. It's called the Deiseroth family mirror. It's only $200, but I think it looks like it's a lot more valuable than that, and it works well in any setting. I think everyone should have this mirror. It works in traditional homes, it works in modern homes. I just think it's a classic. My husband always says, we need a nicer mirror out here. And I said, no, we're never getting rid of that. I love this mirror. Here's some more of his blue and white china porcelain here. When I designed this screened-in porch, when it was a screened-in porch, I designed it after one that Charlotte Moss had. I saw a photograph of hers, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, and I said, I want a screened-in porch exactly like Charlotte Moss's. So with a stone fireplace in the center, and then the chair set up the same way. And when we had it as a screened-in porch, hers was as well. It was wicker. Obviously, when we changed it into a full year-round room and put the windows in, we needed real furniture. And that's where I got these chairs that I wanted to swivel so that you could watch the television. This is a durable cravat fabric. I think a lot of people use it, but I like the tone-on-tone beige, and it wears like iron as well. The fabric on these chairs is a Scalamandre fabric that I like, and I had to laugh when the chairs came. The fabric was inside out and sideways. So we had to send them back. It was quite a fight, but it ended up working out, and I love the fabric on these chairs too. They're very comfortable. These small chairs are just the little Chippendale chairs, and I like this little global kind of print on here. I think it ties in well with everything as well. And I also wanted to talk about this little painting, which I was in an antique store and thought in Nantucket, and I thought that it was an antique. I since found out it was not. It was probably made the week before I purchased it. But what was interesting to me about it was it is exactly our family. I have my oldest child is a daughter. I have a middle son, and then I have a younger daughter. And there I am, and my husband. The only thing that's different about it is that my husband's not blonde, but it perfectly. It's not a rare antique or anything fancy, but it's our family exactly, and I was tickled to get it. I love garden stools. I think they're great you can sit on them, not very comfortable at all, but you can also stack books on it, and they're great for putting drinks on, and I think their shape and form is really nice. And the thing that's nice about them is that there are all different levels of garden stools. You can get very inexpensive ones at Target. These happen to be very nice Chinese export ones that my husband acquired at auction that he's quite proud of. One of the problems with it is that the grandchildren come over and take all of their little toys and stuff them all down here. So when I do move them, then I find a pile of Legos and toys under them. But I guess they like that. This is a blanket chest, so the top opens up, and it was used for storing blankets, but I just love the patina on it and old. We've had it for a long time. We've had it for probably 30 years. I really like it, and I was happy that it fit perfectly in here when we made the transition from a screened-in porch to a regular room. On top of it, I have I would like to collect more of these. I've just started my collection, are these porcupine quill boxes that I think are very charming as well. But this was my birthday gift this year from my husband. I love letters. I like to do crossword puzzles and play Scrabble and that kind of thing. And this is an old alphabet box before people had building blocks. And so they're all the letters of the alphabet, and each one has the uppercase letter on the front and the lowercase letter on the back. And it's how children learn to spell and read. And I just thought it was really cute. We saw it at an auction, and he bought it for me for my birthday. It's hard for me to say what my design style is because I don't really follow any particular model. It just is what comes naturally to me. So I think it is very traditional, but I also want everything to be very comfortable and cozy. If you'll follow me, we'll head over to the kitchen. The fact that we had to redo the kitchen was the primary reason that we bought this house, one of the reasons that we had to. As I said, my husband loves to cook. He's an excellent cook, and building our own kitchen was important to us. We wanted it to be very small. We shop daily, so we don't need a lot of pantry space, and he wanted to have the traditional cook's triangle, which is the range, the sink, and the refrigerator within close proximity to each other. So it's not a very large kitchen at all. Also, considering the amount of food that comes out of this kitchen, it really works well, and it's very useful. I think the biggest feature is the range. This is an industrial garland range, and it truly is industrial. If you'll notice, the cabinets next to it are stainless steel because this range does not have any insulation next to it, so you cannot put wooden cabinets next to it because we wouldn't be able to get insurance for it, and it doesn't meet code. But you can do it in the way that we have used it with the metal cabinets next to it. He chose a garland range because that's the range that Julia Child had, and that is his hero. And he wanted to have the same range that she did. So it's a big piece of equipment with a very large hood above it, with a huge exhaust fan outside, which works perfectly, but of course it could handle a whole restaurant. I just wanted subway tile behind it to go with the look of an industrial range. It was inexpensive. I think it looks great. I think it's a classic look, and it works well. And then his copper pots that you can see are very well used and not cleaned very often, but he uses those a lot. I wanted to have chalkboard. This is chalkboard paint that I put on the walls here. And we put the grocery lists on it and messages to friends and Scrabble scores, etc. And an old joke that a friend wrote years ago is still there about Churchill and Italian men. That's very funny. I wanted painted cabinets. This is Benjamin Moore Palladian Blue. I think they've held up pretty well given the use that they've had. We did this kitchen about 22 years ago. The countertop is a big hunk of marble. I really like marble to look worn in, and so it was not honed or polished. The man that sold it to me was very upset and said, "I don't want you coming back to me in a month saying that it's stained." I said, "No, I'm going to try to stain it. I want it to look stained." So I really like it, and it has worked well for us. And it's incredibly sturdy. I was worried that the cabinetry wouldn't be able to support it, but it has. This is a bulletin board that I just have for the family photos. I really miss not taking pictures with a camera. I always had an old Nikon that I loved and took pictures with. It broke. I tried to replace it. I've tried the digital cameras. They don't work for me. I don't have the technology mind to be able to make them work. So I just have the iPhone pictures printed out with the white border and pretend that I took them with a camera. And so I just put our family photos on this bulletin board, and I like it better than having to scroll through your phone to look at them. When we designed this kitchen, I really wanted to have a seating area with soft seating in it that was connected to the kitchen. In a previous home, the family room seating area was a level down from the kitchen, and I couldn't see or speak to my husband while he was cooking. So I wanted to make sure that we had a space where there was a sofa and some chairs and a coffee table so that we could be in the same room together. And so this was probably the most used part of our house. It's also the only part that doesn't have blue and green furniture. And the reason that is because he came home one day with this needlepoint cushion from an antique store where he was picking something up. He saw this and he said, "This looks like you because I needlepoint." And I thought, oh, it's all the wrong colors, but that's okay. So this is the only part of the house where there's a yellow sofa and red chairs, and it isn't blue and green, but it's all because of the needlepoint ottoman. I also love the Brunswick and Fee fabric, the lilac fabric, and I've always liked it, so I used it for the pillows as well. I also have always loved this fabric, and I was happy to use it. It's a Countenance Tout animal print. Again, an animal print can be still casual and doesn't have to be a traditional leopard print or zebra or anything, but I like having it in the room. I also really like a barrel form chair. I think these chairs are really comfortable. You'll see when we get to our bedroom that I also have them there. They're my favorite style of an upholstered chair. I think they hug the body and they're very comfortable to sit in. I think everyone should have barrel shaped chair somewhere in their house. This is just an extra table. If we're not eating at the island, which seats 6 people, and we have overflow, I'll set this table I can fit 4 or 6 people around this table, and it's just an extra table. It's usually a catch-all for everything that comes into the house. This is where a lot of the papers and the mail and everything goes. But I also clear it off and use it for dining when we have guests over and we're using more people or don't want to sit at the island. We will use this table to dine. And these were chairs that I picked up at an auction. I was happy. I like this style, the Chippendale chair. They were old and I just had them recovered and I like them. And I think these go in any kind of a home, or traditional, modern. I think these are really versatile chairs. My one regret with this house that I did not do when we were doing this addition is that I did not put a fireplace in this room, although I do have these pretty doors and I was able to put bookcases around it. And these are all the cookbooks that we have in this room, and then these are cooking related books over on this side of the bookcase. I also have a collection of Staffordshire figurines. There's Queen Victoria and Albert, her husband, and some horsemen. And I like those. I think that's the perfect space for them. I also have the collection kind of falls over into this little windowsill as well. But I think they're charming. And one of our friends said to me one time when he walked in, "I like your dolls." Here, this is a Korean chest that we found at an antique store that I really like. It has a very complicated lock system on it. This is the key to it. It's interesting, and the front folds down and the top lifts up. I think it's a great looking piece. And above it, we have a portrait of a woman, someone that we don't know again. But it's very funny because when my grandchildren were younger, they thought that this was their mother because she's a brunette, and they would say, "Mama, Mama." So I always say to my daughter, "Your portrait, your portrait." I said, "It's next to your portrait." And here's some tortoiseshell tea caddies as well. This little room is we call it the beer refrigerator, the beer pantry. It's an extra refrigerator that has all the beverages and the overflow food in it. I have some menus from restaurants that we've been to that I've enjoyed, framed. I also have an old map that was done in 1934 of the borough that we live in suburban Pittsburgh here, called Fox Chapel. And it has a drawing of our old house on it. Ironically, this house, which is much older than any of the houses on this map was not included. I guess maybe it wasn't fancy enough at the time. But I recently found this Sanderson bird egg wallpaper. And again, talking about the colors that I like, the blues and browns and the greens really spoke to me. And I thought, I have to have this wallpaper somewhere. So I had the wallpaper that was in the kitchen originally in here, and I took it down so that I could add this wallpaper to it. I've grown a lifelong Pittsburgher. I was born and raised here. My mother was very creative and did really interesting things with our houses that we've had. I've had a friend from college once who came to visit and said, "This is the house of fun concepts." She also subscribed to all of the shelter magazines, which I started reading when I was very young, and just always loved looking at houses and rooms and how people lived. And I think that's kind of what steered me in this direction. This is leading from the kitchen to our back door. There's a big mirror here, so that if you would enter the back door, this is what you would see. It's an old Trumeau mirror that we got. It happened to be this color. I did not paint it, so it worked perfectly. And we were at an antique show or something and saw it, and I said, oh, that would look good in our back hall. So there it is. And I have some antlers that I put next to it to hang some hats on. Moving on, this is the transition into our dining room. Just a sideboard with some china in it. This is our dining room. This was also part of the addition that we put on. It is a perfectly square room, and it felt like that when we initially built it, and I was not happy with it. It felt very closed off, and I didn't enjoy it. So I was trying to think of what I could do to make it more inviting. And I thought, well, the answer to everything is mirrors. So I called an auto glass company and mapped out on the walls these mirrors. I measured and ordered them, and they just came and glued them on the wall. And then I had a carpenter come and just put a stock molding around the mirrors, and I added the molding down below to make it look like maybe it was always here. And it was not. I think it adds a lot of light and reflection to the room again, but it left me without any wall space. So as a result, I had to hang the portraits by chains and from curtain tiebacks that I had picked up, old curtain tiebacks I just screwed into the wall, bought chain at Home Depot, and hung the portraits that way over the mirrors. And I like the way they are. And this is a pair of mirrors that I bought my husband one Christmas. And they're a favorite. And we think they're very old. We think they might even be, they're definitely 18th century, possibly 17th century, although we've never had that confirmed. I keep waiting for Antiques Roadshow to come to Pittsburgh again. So we had to buy a mantle since we were building this room from scratch. And an interesting story about it was the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh used to have an antique show that was wonderful. They no longer do it, but vendors would come from all around, and we saw this mantle, and it happened to be from a local Pittsburgh antique dealer. I said, there's the mantle that we need for our dining room. And one of our friends came along and said, as we were buying it and writing out the check, and said, oh, that was the mantle from my house. So one of our very good friends has pictures, childhood pictures of him standing in front of this mantle, and now it's in our house. So it's kind of a special piece. I really like it. These are paper stars from a party that I just haven't taken down because I like the way they look hanging there. To make this room a little more interesting by adding the mirrors, I also had an artist come named Jim Harris, who does a wonderful job faux painting. And he faux painted this in a faux bois to look like wood, and did the baseboards and the crown molding to give this room, this just square box room, a lot more interest. I wanted to have a round table, but I didn't really know where to get one, and I thought it would be really difficult to find the right size table. So I just got a catering table. It has metal folding legs under it, and I used a Lee Joffa taffeta fabric for this skirt and then just put glass on top of it. And I found these chairs at an auction, and they had this original bluey green leather on them, which was perfect for me, but they had an awful fabric on the back. So I just found a Ralph Lauren tartan plaid wool and put that on the back and was able to keep the leather on the front. So I think that was a really good buy. Over here we have another portrait of a man that we don't know, but I thought he was very handsome as well. And I have a pair of tea canister lamps that go with our collections of Chinese export items. And these, I love the greens in it, and I thought they matched perfectly. And I love tea canister lamps, and it kind of coordinates with our tea caddy collection as well. When doing this dining room, I wanted to do this blue color, which is also a toned down from the palladium blue that's on the kitchen cabinets in the kitchen, the cabinet color. It's the next tone down is the base color for this faux painting. And I also didn't want to use another Oriental rug because I think that if you have too many Oriental rugs in a room, in a house, it's too much. And I think sisal is the great equalizer. It's great. You can use it on porches. You can use it in fancy rooms. And I think this is a perfect example. This is a rush rug, and it didn't come in a size large enough for me, but they said, don't worry about it. We'll just send you a sewing kit. So I had to sew the last 3 pieces onto the length of it. Sat down, they gave me twine and a needle, and I just sewed it together. So it's a very inexpensive rug that I think works in any setting. And this obviously is a more formal room, but I think sisal is great for here. And I don't think the room would have the same feel if it had an Oriental rug in it. This is a Baccarat chandelier. It's a little formal for this house, but we had it when we came from our other house, and I didn't want to sell it or get rid of it. So I also think that that's why the sisal works too. If you can have something that's crystal, but you have a folding table and a sisal rug, that it works together. Over here, this is just a little Chinese cabinet with drawers in it, and I put my notes and letters in here. I think it's very sweet. And over here is a garniture set that is also Chinese export. It's a little untypical of what we normally collect, being blue and white, but I think that the colors work well in here, and it adds some color to this otherwise very bluey green room. When Schumacher started representing Ixel wallpaper and their mural wallpaper, when I saw it, I thought, I need to have this. And I tried everywhere. Where was I going to put it? You have to buy it in panels, and I had so many doorways and windows and everything, I would be wasting most of the wallpaper being cut out and thrown on the floor by the wallpaper installer. So finally I decided, well, I'll do the powder room in it, which is a logical place for interesting wallpapers. And I had already had these moldings put up and sort of frames for it. I thought about taking them off and just doing the whole thing in the mural wallpaper, and then I realized how expensive it was going to be. So I decided to keep the murals, and I had to plan very carefully which panels I was selecting to get what I wanted. So I started with this large green tree and went around the room. And this particular pattern is called Swan Lake, and behind the door here there are some little swans swimming on a lake. But I just love the greens and the blues really spoke to me. And I love trees, and I just thought it was really special, and I'm happy with it. My favorite memories of living in this house are just the people that have been here to enjoy it. My husband is an excellent cook. He owns a catering company. He loves to cook, and we entertain quite a bit. And so I think my favorite memories are having friends over and having large parties, small parties, and just being with friends. I would like people to feel like they're at their house when they come to my house. Let's head over to the primary bedroom. This is our bedroom suite. It's on the first floor, which we're happy about, which I think is what's making staying in this house so enticing. Not having to climb the stairs all the time. This is interesting because this was the original house, and it was built in the mid 1800s, and it was a farmhouse for the land that was around here, later turned into a development. The walls are very thick, and they're made of stone and sand held together with stucco. We can't really mess with the outside at all. We couldn't add on to here because we were fearful of what might happen if we started fooling around with the actual structure, and basically that it would collapse. It did not. We didn't touch it, so we're all fine. But the original front door used to be right over here, and this was the dining room when we purchased this house. It is now our sitting room. And this fireplace was here, and it's wood burning. The chimney swifts like to come and visit. They come back every year and make their nest in here, which is quite loud, but we tolerate it. Here's my husband's collection of his rose medallion porcelain, and we like it. We've also stopped collecting that as well, again, because we don't have any more space for it. And some of his China trade paintings. This is a secretary that we've had for a while. I put it on an angle because I just thought that it would look better than having it flat against the wall. And we just keep books and passports and things like that in here. And we have another Chinese painting, barrel chairs, which I like. These are covered in a Charlotte Moss fabric that she did that I also loved. I think it's just so pretty and soft and green. The carpet throughout this whole suite is a leopard. Like all decorators, designers, and fashion people, I consider leopard a neutral. This is more than a little bit of a touch in every room, and it has been fantastic. It has been here for 20-some years, and it still looks like it did the day we put it in. And I think it looks really great with the pale green walls. This is a table that was just inked and painted. It was an old table that had a glass top that somewhere along the line an artist put some ink around it to make a little design on it, and then we put fabric on the inside of it. This glass lifts up and you can display things in there, although we do not. But I just think it's pretty, and it's in a different fabric in here as well, and it brings a little bit of color in it with the red flowers. And the coffee table is a Chinese tray that came on a stand, and the stand broke and I couldn't find one, so I found a replacement, and that stand is from Wayfair. I also really like this fabric. On this chair we had a silk fabric, but it wore out. Silk is not great for chairs, as you know. So I found this fabric when I was just out looking for a client and said, well, there it is, it's perfect. The pink and the green for this room. And so I recovered the chair in that. We also have a pair of mirrors, a pair of urns, a pair of tables. This was, when we bought the house, the kitchen. And so this took a lot of creativity to figure out how to make the dining room and the kitchen into a bedroom area. The doors were all off center, everything. So I basically had to gut the whole thing and draw it so that everything would be symmetrical again and line up perfectly. In doing so, and what took so long to do it, was that I had to take out a window that was behind the bed, which I was very reluctant to do, but it was the only way I could make this whole thing work. And there was also a door to the left of it. And it killed me to take out doors and windows, but I could only do it that way. It's ended up being great, and I've forgotten that they were even there. I've gotten so used to this being here. But it's not a large bedroom, but with the sitting room beyond it, it gives you the sense of a lot of space. I thought that this room, also being just a plain square, that it needed a canopy on it, and I wanted to have a canopy bed like this, and I had this painting that I thought would look perfect behind this bed. So I sketched out a drawing of how I wanted the bed to look for my drapery maker, and I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. It looks exactly like my drawing, and I'm not a very good drawer at all. So it worked perfectly. I had a pair of antique tie backs that worked perfectly to hold it back. Again, it's the same Charlotte moss fabric with just a plain beige chintz inside it and an upholstered headboard. This was just a sofa that we had that I covered in a green silk for the end of the bed. Pair of rose medallion lamps, pair of Chinese tea scenes for paintings are on the walls. This is just a little hand-painted chair that I had a green little check silk cushion made for it. I think it's just a sweet little chair. It fits perfectly in here. Definitely a bedroom chair. Throw some clothes on it occasionally. It's a dresser. This is a jewelry box that has some hidden compartments in it that are pretty neat, and some drawers that I had lined in a green striped silk fabric so it would match this room. And I think it's an interesting box. I like boxes a lot, and I think it looks nice there. This was originally a bedroom, smack off the dining room, which I thought was very funny. This house was very quirky. And so I repositioned the doorway to put it in the center of the room, and we just built out these closets. So in here is where all of our clothing is. I really like and the moths. I really like the chicken wire with fabric behind it. So my clothing is over here, my husband's is over here, and we have storage up above. I used a Chinese painted wallpaper to coordinate with the rest of this area. I think it's very pretty. And a striped fabric for draperies. This is another writing desk, which I think is funny to use in a closet, but it works for us to put all kinds of things on it. And I think it's prettier than having a big island in it, in a closet area. And I have an ottoman to sit down to put my shoes and stuff on. This is an old Louis Vuitton trunk that weighs a ton that we use to just store our scarves and ties in it. It's an interesting piece that we got at an auction as well. We have a gilt mirror here with a pair of just crystal sconces on it. I believe that we had these at our last house as well. And it also has a crystal chandelier in here as well, which is also a Baccarat one as well, with the jelly jar. This is kind of their signature look up here, very similar to the one that's in the dining room. I like that the leopard carpet goes through this whole area because it really makes it a suite and very cohesive, and that I just use varying shades of greens and greens wallpapers and cabinets to keep it all together. This is a Chinese silk wallpaper that I found. It has birds and flowers, and I just really love the background color. Obviously, this color green is my favorite. I just thought it was very pretty and lent itself to a closet. This is our bathroom. This was the bathroom when we did buy the house. It was not configured this way, but I think this is a really great bathroom. We have the rest of his China trade ship paintings in here, and my bathtub that I use every day, which I love, and some more of his Chinese porcelain collection. We put orchids in here. I also did not want to have a tile floor in the bathroom. I think they're cold, and I just really like wooden floors, but I didn't want to put just a brown wooden floor in here. So I had an artist, the same one that did the painting in our dining room, paint this pattern on the floor. I knew that it wouldn't hold up well. It has been done twice. It was a different pattern before, but the same colors, and it probably will need to be done again soon. But I will always stick with the same colors, but I'll just change the pattern on it. And it's just a necessary evil of having to have him come and redo it about every 10 years. But I like him and I like visiting with him, so it's fun to have him come and I get to pick a new pattern for it. We also have a trap door here that goes down into a basement that was part of the original house. This painting is again of the harbor in Hong Kong. where the trade ships would come in and out. I think it's very sweet. I love the mountains now. If you can imagine modern day Hong Kong, it looks nothing like this. It's all high rises. So I think it's very sweet. And the detail in this painting is wonderful. And you can see what a busy harbor it was back then. Here I have another garden stool. It's Chinese export as well. I use this when I take a bath. I put my phone and my beverage and everything on it. And it's just another pretty stool that matches all of the green here. Home to me is the center of my life, where my family is, where we spend most of our time. It's a place to come to where you feel comfortable, relaxed, and enjoy looking at the things that you've collected and being happy with your surroundings.
When I first walked up to the end of the driveway, it was such an interesting thing for me because it was like life just hit me in the face and went, pay attention, this is part of your story. And you know, with like that kind of intuition that sometimes comes with life and you just know something, I saw the house and I was like, oh my God, okay. And life hit me. It goes, pay attention, this is your story. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm meant to buy this. I'm meant to save this house. I'm meant to save this beautiful, iconic house that's been neglected for decades. And Longfield is what the property is called. That's how our love story kind of started. When I first walked inside, you had to be mindful as you walked along the veranda. Cows had fallen through the deck, so you're carefully walking. And then I walked into the hallway, and every time it rained, there was like waterfalls pouring down the walls. You had to very carefully step down the joists and not fall through the floorboards. But I looked around and I was like, okay, you've got good bones. Like, I can see the beauty in you. I'm gonna bring you back to life.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello Homeworthy, my name is Mel Macpherson. This is my home in Mullumbimby, Australia. Welcome to Longfield, come on in. Hi, my name is Mel Macpherson. I work in television and I live in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales, Australia. Many years ago, I walked up the driveway, this beautiful tree-lined driveway, and I was looking for my next project. And I laid eyes on this decrepit old house that was falling apart in the subtropical heat. And I fell in love with it. I just looked at it and I was like, oh my God, you are beautiful. Most of my friends thought I had lost my mind. It looked like an old ghost house or a scene of a horror movie. It was falling apart, there was timber lying everywhere, cows had fallen through the front deck, but she had beautiful bones. Like, there's hardwood in this house I just couldn't believe. Like, we don't have timber like that anymore. And the minute I saw her, I fell in love instantly. So Longfield has such a rich history, and as I've peeled back the layers, I've been talking with the lovely ladies at the Historical Society, finding old photos on Trove online. So what I can piece together is the house was definitely here in 1905. It was built by a family called Belson. Now, he was a carpenter, so that's why the house is so well built, and it's like lasted the test of time here in the subtropical heat. In 1908, there's some old newspaper articles where he's sold it to a family called Bauer. And the Bauer family, there's these beautiful old photos of them sitting on the old veranda in their chairs. Another one where they're having a family portrait in all their finery, and you can see the old house over their shoulders. And they bought it in 1908, and it stayed in the family line until I bought it back in 2020. I'm quite an adventurous spirit by nature, and it's quite common for me to set big goals and go, yep, I'm gonna do that. But this might have been one of the bravest and craziest projects I have ever taken on in my life. It's taken 3 years just in the restoration process, but it was like a restoration and a new build at the same time. So I've done renovations before, I've done builds before, but this tested my mettle. This was like, wow, and there was so much going on. I had one of my best friends who's a builder and another good friend of mine who's an architect, and we really worked collaboratively together, and we'd come up with different ideas, or we'd peel back layers of the house and discover something new that we didn't account for. It was quite a really enjoyable collaborative process, but the house revealed herself to us. That was the interesting thing. It was like a conversation. The more we peeled back parts of the house, the more she would tell us her story. You know, we were finding old relics and old rusty things in the paddocks. I found the original front gates that had the name of the property still welded into them, like Longfield, and rusty pots and old engines and horseshoes and spoons and bottles, and I even found a ruler from a kid that was born in 1920 behind the skirting board as we peeled the house apart. The house was originally on timber piers. They had been bored out by termites and it was barely holding itself together. I think someone had put bricks under there somewhere between 1900 and when I bought it in 2020. And we had to lift the whole thing up 2 stories in the air. We jacked it up on car jacks, put all these Jenga, I don't know if you've played the board game Jenga, but these Jenga blocks underneath, and lifted it up, and then put new steel piers on it, and then slowly lower it back into the ground and cement it in and level it out. So before we did anything, we actually just had to save the old house and make sure all those beautiful old timbers and trusses and frames could stand the next couple of centuries going forward. So we're in the hallway. When I first bought this property, you would walk in here and there were holes in the ceiling, the floors were rotted, you had to carefully step down the hallway and be careful not to fall through the floor. It was blue, it was rotting, it was beauty was in the eye of the beholder, let's say that. But now, 5 years on, it's a completely different experience site. The walls are white, the lights are on, we've breathed life back into it. On the hallway here, I've got a beautiful, this is some of the things that I like to do. It's like unexpected art. So before we restored the house, there's an album cover, it's from Dope Lemon, it's their vinyl cover, but Angus Stone, who you may know, Angus and Julia Stone, it's his label. They bought this big pink Cadillac into the front yard behind the white picket fence, and you can see the old house behind it and the old white picket fence and the driveway before it was restored. So I kind of decided to make that a little bit of its history that you get to kind of revisit as you walk along the hallway. If you come along further here, this is back in the day, another little memoir of the past. That's the old house before it was restored and some cattle in the field. And it's a photo I took maybe about 4 years ago. And I can remember like it was yesterday, I'm trying to get the cows' attention so they all look at the camera at once. I'm like, hey cow! And they're like, huh? What are you doing? So I managed to get them all looking at me at once and grab this snap and then blow it up. And so it's a really beautiful memory of how far I've come with this house. This is a beautiful old children's saddle that I found in the back shed when I bought the property. And it looks a lot better now. I've turned into a secret leather restorer. And just more little memories and unexpected pieces of interior design that reminds us where we've come from and takes us where we're going. This doorway here, it's quite an interesting little clue from the past because I found some old photos. In the first photo, I started counting the beams along the veranda. I was like, there's 4 posts. And then when I found another photo 2 years later, there was 5 posts. And so what I've worked out is somewhere between 1905 and 1908, they've added 2 more rooms onto the back of the house. And you can see it from the old photos. Suddenly it's longer. So I would say this door used to be the back door, and then they extended the house longer. Somewhere in 1908, maybe they had a few more children, and they made the house even longer. So coming through this door, when I bought this, there was a massive hole up here. Every time it rained, it was pouring down through here, black walls. But I took the time to rebuild this exactly as it was. It's got the old Kosciuszko style glass in here. This is the only door I actually had to remake after all of that. The rest of the doors are original. A little nod to the past. I really took the time to take in the detail, get it right, make it exactly as it was. So it's really nice to see it come back to life. Over the restoration, I found all these little bits and pieces and knickknacks. There's like old spoons and little saddlebags. And these are these shoes that when we lifted the entire house into the air and re-stumped it and put it back down, one of the contractors who was helping me, he goes, "Look at this, I've just found this pair of shoes." He pulled them out, they were all covered in dirt and dust, and I was like, oh my goodness, like you can see all the little hand nailing and the detail and the leather and things like this. And only a few months ago, I had a friend come through here and I was like, yeah, and then I found these old shoes under the house, and he's like, "You know what that's for?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, back in the day, they would put a pair of shoes or kids' shoes under the foundations of a building to ward away evil spirits. So lucky I didn't throw them out, because I restored them, put them back together again, and they're part of this beautiful history wall that tells the story of this house and who lived here. This is the oldest photo I've managed to find of the old homestead. This is the Belson family. It was found in the State Archives, so the resolution is incredible for an old photo. And you can see the old family sitting on the veranda. These are the Belson kids. From the history I can tell, one of these children died in World War I in Gallipoli, which is quite a significant battle for Australians and New Zealanders. You know, the whole family here, you can see the old house over their shoulders, which I just adore. And this is William and Catherine Bauer. And one of their youngest son inherited this house from them back in the day. He was the man that inherited Longfield. And then I managed to go through the old World War I archives and found Percy, the youngest son, who inherited it after his father, and his enrolment papers. Now, Percy got shot in the bottom in, I think, Passchendaele in France, survived thankfully, and he came back and married a lovely lady called Agnes, had a daughter, and then it was his daughter's 3 sons that I bought the house off back in the day. There's a ruler up there from we found behind the skirting boards from a kid that was born in the 1920s. He's a Bauer. Old keys, old bottles and lids and pennies, and I've just kind of celebrated all these bits and pieces that to some people might be nothing, but when you put them together, they tell a story, and it's like the echoes of the past are speaking to us. So, you know, as I pulled the house apart, I listened and I found them and I pieced together the history of this house. Behind us, all this is the old original VJ boards. I had a man come in with a giant spacesuit, so he was protecting himself from the lead paint, and he was blasting off all the walls. And so we had all the original timber like reveal itself. The outside cladding was teak, it was this golden timber, and inside all these boards kind of came up. And we reused a lot of the original fabric where we could. So you'll see bits of paint and colour of the original house, and we put it all back together again. And some walls I've left with little hints of the colours of what the house used to be. There's about 3 or 4 walls. This is one of them, because we were then going to paint it again, and then we went, oh no, wait, like there's all these little gorgeous colours of what this house used to be, the layers, and we kind of decided to celebrate certain walls, and this is one of them. The other thing is here in the back shed, I found all these little pieces of pallet. Now, most people would go, why are you keeping pieces of pallets and old timber? But I found where Percy Ambrose Bauer, who's one of the old historic figures of this house, had actually written his name in pencil, and it's like his literal signature is still here with us. So I decided Girlbrand, I liked Mullumbimby, which is the town where I'm from, and it just became unlikely art for me and tells the story of this house. So I have a little bit of fun with this cow painting, because when you walk in the side door outside, he's kind of staring at you through the window and you're like, is there a cow in the house? So I have a little bit of fun with that. He's a gorgeous Palmer painting. He's a local artist around here. My style, or the way I've designed this, I have a lot of strength when it comes to building and flipping houses and like the hard materials, the materials that are bolted down. So that's where a lot of my confidence lies. Also, my mum used to restore antiques, so I've naturally got this love of old things. And I grew up seeing her breathing life back into old things and seeing them have a new life again. So a lot of the relics that are in this house are gifts from my mum when she had an antique shop back in the day, so they're quite nostalgic for me. Many of the other pieces are things that I've found along the way on the restoration journey that I've found a new lease of life for, or a way to bring what was in the past into its future. And then other pieces are built around just things that I like, or parts of me, parts of my life, parts of my relationship. You know, I'm quite eclectic, I'm quite a highly spirited character, I'm very adventurous, so I have a hat wall with a hat collection, you know, and some of them have got my hats from Burning Man hanging on them. I have a lot of my photography for many years is blown up on the wall, and you don't always have to have other artists' work. It's also nice to celebrate the experiences that you've had, the places you've been, or photos that are symbolic of a time in your life or that evoke creativity, and that for me has been such an enjoyable thing of which photos will I blow up of mine, of where I've been. So along the way, I've learnt a lot about heritage architecture, and that it's really important to not dress up new things as old things. So usually the rule is you keep the old house as she was, pride of place, she gets all the attention, and you tastefully add whatever you add onto the rear. And the idea is that it doesn't compete for attention. So as you drive past, Longfield sits on the hill, she's proud, and she still looks as she was. You can't actually see the addition from the road. But as you walk in the front door, you follow these big, vast hallways, and you pop out and you walk all the way through into the modern section. And then it opens up, the light, the windows, the ceiling, and it just pops. It brings the outside in. You get to take in all the views of the Coonaim Ranges. It's 360-degree views. And it's been designed so as you step back into the space, you can even look back at the old house. It's almost a celebration because it's framing the old roof, the old bullnose veranda. You have a sunken courtyard with all the ferns. And at a certain time of day, it does this beautiful shadow play on the floor with all the fern fronds. So one of my favorite things in the entire house is the dining room table. We had to rebuild the veranda, but I kept all the posts and the beams. And that's what I've built this table out of. I thought of all the people who've walked over that veranda on the years, all the stories that have been in their hearts, all their trials and tribulations, how beautiful would that be to turn it into the heart of the home and then add the new energy and the new story and the next chapter of Longfield, which is often built around dining room tables. You know, these are the places where we laugh and we gather and we eat food together. And I just thought that is where that belongs. One of the things I really wrestled with and had to deliberate on was what materials to use in the new addition. I used a lot of polished concrete, and I picked recycled bricks for the walls because they've got the dents and the chips and the marks, just like the old timber in the old part of the house. And when I was cleaning up the fields and the paddocks and around the house, I found 6 of these bricks. Now, I decided to use them in the wall because when I Googled this J. Petrie and Son fire brick, this is from a brick factory that went bust in Brisbane in about 1898. So I was like, oh, that would be such a cool motif in amongst the recycled brick that we'd bought to make the walls. The kitchen island bench, it's this big stainless steel bench. Now, quite often you'd think kitchens, commercial kitchens, stainless steel, but we put an 80 grit sandpaper on it, and we've done this kind of scratch effect, and it's made it all matte, and it's a beautiful surface. We've had big Christmas days with all my friends, the plates and dishes lining up, and everyone comes and serves themselves. It's a beautiful, beautiful kitchen space, and it's been so nice to live in. All the timber underneath it on the shelves, this is all old floorboards that we've reused. And even here, like with the decorations, they're old bottles that I found as we were like digging around the house. They're these vintage bottles. So Lismore Cordial, this is a town about 45 minutes away. This bottle would be like 60, 70 years old. So reusing all these little bits that were trash to them, they were throwing it in an old bottle pit. It's an old gin bottle, and we've kept it, and now I'm using it as flower vases. This painting, I adore it. It's another painting by Mai Harlow, who is a good friend of mine. And I love it because it represents the feminine, you know, turning inward, going into the dark, going into that self-witnessing place, you know, whether it's chaos, darkness, if we're down, we're sad, we're reflecting, but you come out with all-seeing eyes, you come out with wisdom, you come out with the experience of the journey that's made you wiser. These jars, they were a gift from my father when I was 25, so that's nearly 20 years ago now. They're Federation jars, which is turn of the century, 1900s. That's the age of this house. So I always find that quite curious. I was like, I wonder if my father knew all those years ago that I was going to take on Longfield and do this project. It's a beautiful synchronicity. So I keep them in the kitchen. He's not with us anymore, but every time I'm here and I'm cooking, yeah, makes me think of him. He was a very important person in my life. Now the kitchen oven and the stovetop, because it's near a window, I didn't want to block the view with these big boxy range hoods. So I was trying to find something slim and slender that just kind of didn't obstruct the view, and you could kind of cook and enjoy and look out to the paddocks and the cows and the beautiful trees. So it was the one of its kind, and I ran with it. But curiously enough, if you've ever tried to make a timber ring that's then on a slope to like hug around that at the top, that is a mathematical equation mind bender, let me tell you, but we found a way. One more little treasure I have to show you is my mum's old telephone. This is like a vintage telephone. I have no idea of its age, but she used to always tell me these stories where she actually had it hooked up so you could take phone calls on it at one stage. You could plug it into the wall with the old plastic 3 prongs. And she said, yep, you can pick it up, you can receive a phone call on it. But then she used to always warn me, don't answer a call on it when there's a lightning storm. So some electrician out there would tell me why, but she said that wasn't a good idea. So in my marketplace adventures, I found these old Australian designer chairs. They're Parker chairs, and they were a designer who was making them around the 1950s. So I had them reupholstered because the material had seen better days. And another one of my marketplace finds were these Tessa chairs. Now, this is another really well-known Australian furniture designer. Fred Lowen, I think was his name. So they're real treasures to find on marketplace, and they're amazingly comfortable. And there's a buffalo hide lounge. I also picked that up. That was a vintage find, and a vintage Berber rug. When I picked this up, you could still bang the dust from Morocco out of it. But it's nice having like old things, vintage things. They've already had a life, so you don't have to be so precious about them. I'm learning that is definitely a good thing. Now I will take you to the bedroom. This was a really interesting room because we had a lot of asbestos in here. So it was one of the few rooms I had the opportunity to like peel off all the walls, peel off all the inside lining and see what was behind it. And then we peeled back and we found all this incredible hardwood timber and framing. Up the top, you can see these old mortise and tenon joins. And we don't even build houses like that anymore. So that kind of carpentry and craftsmanship, that's the sign of a beautifully well-built old house. And then we left a little piece of it open because with all this cedar and beautiful hardwood and ironbark, it felt criminal just to close the walls up. So once we'd got rid of the asbestos, this has new VJ boards for cladding, but we left a little window to the past so you could kind of celebrate these frames and then put the lining above the rafters because, I mean, look, I'll be honest, I have a little bit of a hardwood timber fetish, so any chance I can to show this beautiful wood, I've chosen to do that. And yeah, it's really added some warmth, some really nice warmth and natural tones to this room. I should probably tell you about my hat collection. My mother has a reputation for hosting a good dinner party, and she would collect all these crazy hats from around the world, like Matador hats and Russian general hats and you name it, she had a hat from somewhere in the world. So it might be a little bit of my mother coming through, but this is my hat wall because I love a good hat. I like to wear a good hat out. Some of these are from Burning Man. They're hats that I've made to take out into the desert to these festivals. Pretty sure if I bang that, you'll probably still see the dust. Yeah, they're just beautiful expressions of me and little parts of the adventures I have. This is another one that I made out of an old pair of jeans. It's the back pocket. They are
my favourite pair of jeans, and I didn't actually want to let it go, but they had run their course. So I turned them into a hat and added all sorts of fun. That one's yet to go to the desert, so maybe this year. This is an old Victorian lounge chair that I found, because I think every girl deserves a throne. I found this on Marketplace. I'm a bit of a fiend for Marketplace. I love getting in there and finding these little treasures. So I had it reupholstered by my friends who run a upholstery company called Dusty Road, and we put some velvet. I mean, what else are you going to put on a throne? Velvet. It's got to be done. So that's my little throne. Over here is a beautiful vintage mirror. Ironically, the bricklayers who were helping me with the house, we got talking one afternoon, and he has a absolute love for antiques, and he's like, Mel, I've got this beautiful mirror. He goes, we can't fit it in our home. Maybe you'd like it. It would look really good here. And all the tones in the mirror, the rust and the gold and the browns, just works with the wood. But it's also been the thing that's inspired all the tones and the colours I've chosen for this room, you know, down to the linen bedding, the artworks, the timber. More of my hat collection with a little old vintage Milner's, I guess, hat holder. There's probably an official name for that. This is another one of my photos that I've blown up from Burning Man. The whole city and all the chaos is behind me, and then I looked out into the desert at sunset, and there was this lone figure walking through the dust and the storm and the sunset hour. And it just inspires me. It's a really nostalgic picture for me. I don't know, makes my creativity bloom. This is all old timber that we salvaged off the house and denailed, and then we've reused into the joinery. And one of my favourite things is these bedside tables. They're old singer drawers. So you know the old sewing machines that have the little drawers all the way down the side? Ever since I've been a little girl, I've always loved little nooks and little boxes and things that you can put stuff in. So I went on Marketplace. I think I bought 3 of these sewing machines so I could get the little wooden drawers off it. And yeah, it's been fun. I put them back together, and then we've used the old floorboards that we've farmed off the house in the areas that we couldn't salvage and made bedside tables. Speaking of unlikely interior design pieces, this is an old Turkish gym mat that I found in a vintage shop. So I will be honest, it didn't smell the greatest when I first found it, but we ripped out the old lining, restored the leather, restitched it and hung it, and then put a new kind of high density foam inside it. And that's become the headboard. And it's actually one of my most favorite things in this room. It's just got this patina that only time can give something. I really like finding things you don't expect to see in a bedroom, or you don't expect to see in certain places, and finding a way to use them. This beautiful, beautiful artwork is by one of my friends, Mai Harlow. So my partner and I thought it'd be really nice to get a piece commissioned for the wall here. And I've got to say, it is the most curious experience. My friend is an artist, and she said to me, well, I need some inspiration of you girls. And I'm like, you mean you want me to send nude photos of myself to you? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, not the thing I thought I'd be doing in my life, but here we are. And actually what she's created is so beautiful. The female form and all those tones from the mirror and the sheets. I said, bring all that warmth, fleshy, rusty, natural, earthy tones into it. She's got paper and mixed media. So it's one of the first pieces I've ever had commissioned. So I really love it. One of the benefits from living in the country is that you're surrounded by these 360-degree views. And Longfield sits on a hill. So every morning I get to see the sun from sunrise to sunset. And I wake up looking out these French doors at Mount Chincogan, which is one of the most iconic mountains here in Mullumbimby. So the ensuite. One of the challenges with an old house is it would look really stark and odd to put like really new fixtures in. So we chose a tile that was quite organic and not perfect. So everything looks like it's a bit like the rest of the house. It's had a story, it's had a life. So these are not square, they're not perfect. I also chose tapware that has a patina, that can get a patina. It's unlacquered brass. So as it evolves, it doesn't look new and stark. The basins are like this cracked handmade porcelain by a potter in Tasmania. And even the timber around the mirror, we handmade these, and it's timber that we've farmed off the house and then routed in, you know, lights in the side with diffusion and things like that. So I've really tried to embrace materials that aren't perfect. So the tiles, the unlacquered brass so that it builds up this nice patina, the old hardwood that we've farmed off other parts of the building that we couldn't save. And I've tried to incorporate that back into the bathroom. We've even managed to sneak in a few skylights. So the trick with old houses, how do you let light in? Because they're boxy, they've got small windows. So without ruining the visual heritage value outside, you can't see it because it's inside the box gutter. We managed to sneak a couple of skylights into both bathrooms, and I cannot tell you how much light it's let in. Further to that, I should probably let you know about my friend Mark. So he's filming here today, and Mark and I usually work on shows like The Amazing Race. So it's really fun to be on the other side of the camera and bringing this little tour of my home with you guys today.
My local community is Mullumbimby. That's the local town that's a few minutes down the road. They're quite a vocal lot. If you don't get it right, you'll know. When people found out I'd brought the house, they were like, "You bought the old haunted house on the hill?" Like, no way. I have memories of that house. When I was a kid, I broke in. There was still an old car parked in the garage and it was like it was frozen in time. And someone else would be like, "Yeah, there were these old like Women's Weekly magazines on the old dining room table." And everyone's got these stories where they've broken in or like, "Oh, I swear there's a ghost in that house." So it's quite loved and adored by the community, and people have their stories of growing up and, you know, remembering it. But a lot of other people have felt this pull or allure, obviously the same thing I've felt and made me fall in love with her. Everyone wanted to see her saved. It's been really reassuring and uplifting along the way to have those well wishes and people going, "You're doing a great job. It looks amazing. Like, I'm so glad you're saving the old house." So that for me has felt, because it's been a hard journey. It's been tough at times. So to have that kind of encouragement from your local community has meant a lot.
This is the guest bedroom. It's another one of the doors that face the front of the house. And it's got beautiful French doors as well. And it's been an opportunity to use some of the old pieces that my mum's gifted me over the years. I've got one of the old New South Wales railway luggage racks from the old trains. You can even see New South Wales in up here. And a lot of these pieces have been in my mum's house for a long time. And as she's got older and downsized, I've been lucky enough to have them gifted to me. This is an awesome old vintage mirror I found in a vintage shop. And this is an old French charcoal drawing. It's got a funny story. A dentist I went to many years ago, he noticed, "You're really creative, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I picked up this French drawing from an artist that was in Paris in, I think it was like 1890. He goes, "I want to gift it to you." So I've carried it around, and I just think she's quite a nice, elegant woman, just, you know, taking life in. Trying to use a lot of greens and natural tones to bring the outside in. And I've even got the old suitcases up there. So when I bought this house, there were these old vintage suitcases still in the house. So I've kept them and incorporated them into much of the interiors. They're just little echoes of the past. Now this is my office. This is a bit of a creative zone. It's the place where I, you know, come up with ideas, dream, ponder. But there's some cool things in here that we found when we blast the lead paint off the walls. Now, behind my office desk, when we took the paint off the walls, the lovely gentleman who was helping me do that, he goes, "Hey Mel, there's writing on the wall." And I was like, "What?" So we came in here and we were trying to make, we call this the Longfield hieroglyphics because it's a little hard to read. But what we've worked out is it says, "Look out for bazaar," which is like a fete or a fair. Then it's got New School of Arts, and then it's got the town Mullumbimby, which is where I'm from. So this was under 4 or 5 layers of paint, and I'm still curious, like, did they put a sheet up on the wall and try and make a poster that they'd hang in the trees for a fair or a fete back in the day? Because the School of Arts in Mullumbimby burnt down around 1920. So were they fundraising for the new School of Arts? I don't know, but it's certainly not what we expected to find under the walls. And you can see where there's little bits of this beautiful green sage coloured paint that I left on the walls, and that's what gave me the inspiration to pick some of the tones in here. So the daybed, I used that sage green to pick the colour for the daybed. And especially for the desk, I thought there's a lot of timber in here, I wanted to lighten it up. And so these are beams that we salvaged off the old original veranda. We put a bit of a whitewash on them just to make sure it wasn't like timber walls, timber floors. It just gave it a little bit of breathing room. This typewriter was my mother's. So I still remember her writing my absent school notes on that when I was really young. And I just thought it's a really nice, little artwork to have on the wall in your office, because we're all using laptops and keyboards these days. And it's just like a really cool vintage nod to the past. And yeah, it was my mother's, which I really like.
My favourite thing is so much of the hardwood that came off this house. I spent hours denailing. I rang friends, I'm like, grab a hammer, help me denail all these pieces of timber. And we've reused it in all the furnishings. The best piece, I would say, is the dining room table. So when I first bought this house, I was walking along the veranda and I was thinking about all the people who've come before me. You know, what was in your heart? What was your story? What were the things you were worried about in a day or happy about in the day? And then I took all those timbers from the posts and the beams of the original veranda and I turned them into the heart of the home, which is the dining room table. And there's something about sitting around that now as the next generation or the next chapter of Longfield and adding our energy to that timber that's witnessed and seen so much.
A little stop to the powder room. We reused a lot of the timber that we'd farmed off the old house, and same thing with the mirror here. Decided to be a little bit more adventurous in this room with the sagey green tiles. Part of me thinks, I wonder if I should have done it in all the bathrooms, because as most people who clean know, don't use white tiles. Not my finest effort, but anyway, such is life. This is another one of the guest bedrooms. We've got the pull-out couch, because old houses, small rooms, so you have to be a little creative about how you use the space. This is for clothes, you know, it's an old ladder. And I was at a vintage shop in town and they'd done it for their display rack. And I was like, what a great idea. So bought the ladder, we put that there, and that's what you hang your clothes off. More vintage suitcases that I found that were left in the house when I bought it. This is another one of those little windows to the colours of what this house used to be, the old yellows and blues. And I didn't paint over it because I just love that unexpected little framing of different colours and yeah, the nod to the past. This is another one of my little creations. So more Longfield boards and timber that we farmed off the house. And I bought these old sewing machine legs and I thought, oh, that'd make a really good side table. So I had that all powder coated and then we added the top on. So yeah, more unlikely things in unlikely places. These old scales were my mother's as well. So as she's 86 now, so she's downsized significantly and she's given me lots of little snippets of her life that are now mine. Interestingly enough, the laundry is where I got a bit brave. I decided to reuse the old concrete sink and put it into the modern cabinetry. The old hardwood timber, you know, we reused it again and it was another opportunity for that. And then on the walls, you can see more of the old colours of the house. And there was this writing on the wall that we found and it said, "These tools belong to A.L. Bartley." Now I thought that was just one of the brothers that I had bought it off, but it was actually the brother's mother. So I really liked the little shout out to the girls who owns the tools. I'm like, yeah, girl. I kept all the old clothes hooks and I kept them on the side and reused them in here as a bit of a mud room. And you've got that little bench seat, more hardwood timber. My friends often laugh with me and go, is there anything you can't make out of a piece of Longfield timber? And I'm like, well, there's plenty. The entertainment area. This table's made out of Longfield timber and this old concrete trough, we decided to reinstate it, polished them up. They're beautiful, I love this. So it's a really, really good entertaining area. You can sit out here, have barbecues, watch the sunset. It usually sets over this way. It's a really nice way to, you know, bring the outside to a meal. Now this, there used to be an old back shed here, and this is an old laundry copper. So originally they would have had a big copper pot in here. They would have lit a fire underneath and stirred all the washing. I tried to save it when we were fixing the house, but it fell over. But we reused the bricks, built it back to its former glory, exactly where it was. But I noticed all these birds sitting on top of it. Now in Australia we have these beautiful birds called eastern rosellas, and as I was building this back, they were sitting on the top of it and they were looking into it, and I was like, you're trying to nest there. So when I built it back, I put in a little false floor, I put in a ceiling, I opened it up, and we've had little baby eastern rosellas nesting in there every year for the last 3 years. So it's about as close to having children as I plan on getting, but I'm a mum. These were originally part of the old front gates. When I was in the fields, I picked up these big old rusty gates. I nearly drove over them. And then they had two of these. They had one little rising sun, and that's another rising sun, but I turned them together and made a little bit of a, I don't know, magic eye, a bit of garden art. My favorite place though, sunset baths. So it's a big double-ended bath. You can kind of sit toe to toe, turn on the hot water, kick back, watch the sunset through all the natural grasses and trees. It's such a beautiful space. And these little baskets, they came from a little vintage shop, so I've just put little succulents in there because I can feel proud. I don't kill succulents. They seem to thrive with me. Other plants, not so much. More little garden relics, old rusty cogs and wheels. This is a little bit of a bench, a little pondering bench. I think everyone needs a pondering bench in their life. Longfield. This is the name of the property. Now that was also attached to the old front gates I found in the field, and even the deer, it was hanging on by wire when I first found it, so it was like, but I ended up welding it back on slightly wonky because it's always been a wonky D. Papayas, the papaya trees are going off. Got limes, finger limes. If you've never tried a finger lime, you definitely should. It's a native Australian fruit. It's like lime caviar. So imagine a little pod that you squish out and you eat, and these little balls of citrus that burst in your mouth. It's amazing. It's very Australian, but amazing. So these are the garden beds. They're all made out of Longfield timber that we've kept off the house. I've got corn, sweet potato, some lettuces. Don't look at my lettuces, they're looking a little worse for wear at the moment. But I used the old farrows. So I found these farrows in the fields, and they would have used that back in the day to put on the back of a tractor or horses probably, and scrape the ground. So that's what I have my like tomato vines and my zucchinis and my cucumbers growing up. So we've just harvested a big lot of tomatoes, so I'm resetting them again. Over here is my outdoor history wall. The old sigh, keys, horseshoes, bits. I'm pretty sure these would have been the little stencils that you would have sprayed on crates. So I'm not sure what they were sending to Sydney, but something. Another little concrete tub for washing your vegetables, and you pull them out of the garden. It's a really nice space. I really sit out here and just slow down a little bit. It's really nice. Hands in the soil, growing veggies. The pool, and more importantly, the pool fence. Now, a lot of people build pool fences out of glass and things like that. Glass to me just sounds like a lot of cleaning. So this was a really, I don't know, a bit of an original idea. We cemented in lots of pieces of metal rebar upright, and then we welded the top on. Now the reason I like this pool fence is for a lot of reasons, but one of them is you see through it. So when you're looking out and you're looking out at the landscape, it blends into the landscape and your eyes kind of let out into the distance to the green. It's farm-like, you know, that little rusty patina, it's like all the farm relics that are littered around the garden. It's like it belongs here. And the best bit is, about a year ago, I put a passion fruit vine in the ground, and it's been absolutely going off. We've had hundreds and hundreds of passion fruits, still going. They're not quite ripe yet, but oh my God, hundreds of them. The sweetest things ever. If you haven't tried a passion fruit, you must. They're so good. It's a small pool, but that's a really considered thing. We live very close to the beach, about 10 minutes drive that way is the ocean. So it does get hot here, so it's really nice to be able to jump in at the end of the day and cool off, wash off the heat of the day. But I spend a lot of time in the ocean, so I didn't want to make too much cleaning for myself. But it's beautiful, yeah. We sit around here, lots of my friends, have a drink, watch the sunset. It's a social pool. So one thing I've learned a lot about with this house is how to blend the old with the new. And there's a whole theory in heritage architecture where you don't want to make what you build new as something that's like fake old. So you let the old be the hero. You let her stand in all her glory. So as you drive up the front road, she's there. It only looks like the old house. And as you drive up the driveway, this is slowly revealed. And it's like a walkway. It's like, that's what was, that's the past, and this is what is now. This is the future. So recycled brick, lots of galvanized roofing and tin, hardwood, polished concrete floors. I think it blends really well, but it's not an easy thing, let me tell you. Thinking about what materials, yeah, I deliberated on that for a while. So it was a huge process to reinstate the old veranda back to her former glory. All the detail, all the lines, even right down to the chamfer in the posts and the timber filigree. I had to get them re-laser cutted exactly as they were, build it back, make sure there were rafters every metre. It's come out exactly as it was, but I really took the time to mark the detail and all the little fine notes of what was in the past so that I could recreate it. So this is a mangle. Can you imagine having to do your laundry this way? There's a bit of a tradition in my house. The house I grew up in Newport had an old mangle at the front door, and my brothers and I always laugh because it's where we'd hide the front door key. So it seemed only fitting to have my own mangle to keep the tradition going. But yeah, I'm glad I don't have to do my sheets with it. When I was pulling apart one of the old cattle sheds, I found all these old cattle troughs. Now, I travel a lot for work, so I've planted them with a lot of succulents because you can't kill them. But yeah, they've turned into these gorgeous little gardens, and they're just, yeah, I just love them. Little rusty relics. Because as I was cleaning up all the paddocks and all the fields, I kept, there was 6 cattle troughs, there was old metal cauldrons, and I've turned them into garden art all around the garden. If you look carefully, you can see little snippets of these little bits of treasure I found when I was cleaning up the fields. I've got to take you into the babe cave, or the she shed, because why should all the boys have all the fun? This is my she shed / babe cave. The place of surfboards and skis and bikes. But the reason I brought you in here is I wanted to show you the walls. The original veranda timbers we planed back. Now, cows had fallen through it. They were warped and bent. Everyone thought I was a bit crazy for hanging on to them. They're like, get rid of them. I'm like, no, we're going to plane them and bring them back to life. And now they've become the walls with all their old nail holes. We even found the piece of timber that had the old timber order on it. If you look carefully, it says Bower Job, which is the old family that's lived here since 1908. And over here, this was one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given. The builder, this gorgeous Aussie friend of mine, his name's Ben Kenner, he helped me build this entire house. Slowly but surely, he was stealing pieces of the old hardwood off the property every time he went home. And then slowly over a year, he built me a workbench, which is the most exquisite work of art. I burst into tears when he gave it to me. He shut my eyes, he brought me into the she shed and he goes, I've made you something. And it's made out of the old 4 corners of the original white picket fence. He's even used the fascias as the old wood press, the original timber fascias of the house. All this beautiful timber, dovetail joins. It's one of the most beautiful things anyone has ever gifted me. It's so meaningful.
I can tell you what gives this home soul. So much love has been poured into it. Like, I've deeply considered its past, its story, and I've tried to reinterpret it with all the love in my heart and the greatest of sensitivity and creativity, how it might manifest in its future and how it expresses itself going forward. And I think when my friends come here, I've had Christmas days here and many parties, and I have a beautiful group of friends. They feel my love of this creation, this artwork, in every wall and every nook and every cranny. So in this house, I think it's my love for what I saw in its potential, like bringing it back to life. It needed a lot of love. It needed a lot of love. And so I think when you walk in here, that's the love you feel in this home, is that someone cared to save it. You know, for me, home is like a nest or a womb. It's a safe space. It's the bit where I just feel so at ease and I can be me, but it's also an expression of me. It's an expression of my life. Home is an extension of your personality, of your self. It's a safe space. It can be a creative space. It can be an inspiring space, but it's also like a warm hug.
Now, Longfield's best kept secret, it's a little love seat made out of a vintage chairlift that I got from a ski resort many years ago. Oh, look who's here. It's a good place to soak in the view, isn't it, babe?
It's amazing.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.
Hello, Homeworthy. I'm Martin Bourne. This is my house in upstate New York. Come on in.
Watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, my name is Martin Bourne. This is my house in upstate New York. I am an interior stylist by profession, and I'm also a little bit of a craftsperson. I collaborate and design fabrics, ceramics, and work with fellow photographers and artists to create still life photography and art. I started looking for a little place with some earth because I really like to have some garden and I enjoy gardening a great deal. And so my search for a home up here began by looking in a real estate window in the West Village of New York and seeing the radius of New York and what you could buy for a certain amount of money in different places. And that led me to this home, which was the very last home that we came to look at. It was the furthest away, it was way too big, it had no electricity, but there was something very charming about it. And then having visited, all of those things were confirmed to me that basically nobody had ever really done anything to the house. It had only ever been owned by two families since it was built in around 1830. And so there was something really great about the fact that it had been simply added to, layers upon layers upon layers of paint and wallpaper, and rooms divided and split up to accommodate different families and people's histories in this house. And so really, having got the house, the main thing that we did was to sit and enjoy the spaces and then work out how to peel back some of the things we didn't love quite so much. And it was a big sense of discovery, because we discovered in rooms there are doorways in this house that were boarded up, or staircases were changed, directions were changed from roof lines. So every time we peel another layer back, we discover something else that's then become really the fabric of the house as it is now. So this is what we call the gallery room, and it is right in the middle of the house. When the house was first built, this was actually the very last room of the house, and anything further on is a newer addition. So this room we discovered after a lot of peeling back layers and taking floors up and et cetera, we discovered that this was probably the original kitchen of the house. So behind me there's these really long cupboards. There was also a storage room. And when we look at marks on the floor, we could sort of see where the stove used to be, where there used to be a doorway that's now a window, etc., etc. So this is a room where if we have lots of people over, this is where we sort of start our evening. This is our room where we have cocktails and we chat, and we might have a few like hors d'oeuvres or appetizers. And then this is where the party starts. And then we end up going to the dining room or we go to the living room. But this is the room where you kind of sit for a while. It's nice to sit outside on the side porch in the evenings and leads out into the garden. But this is, I wouldn't call it the heart of the house, but it is the very middle of this house. So one of the biggest discoveries that we made was a staircase that had been completely blocked in. We had no idea it was here. And I had a friend who was an architect who arrived and went down to our cellar from the outside of the house and said, "Where do the stairs go?" And I said, "What stairs?" And he said, "Well, the stairs above me." So we then pulled off a lot of this old birch paneling and we discovered these very steep back stairs that now go to nowhere. It took us a while to work that one out, but essentially when they added onto the house, they turned a roof line and the stairs then led out to a window. So they were useless. So when we first got the house, this had been completely blocked up by its own door and it had been nailed closed. And one of my biggest fears was there was going to be a dead body or a skeleton behind the door. But there wasn't. There was some really beautiful old ticking. I still think I have a little bit of it and a few old books. This was a newer addition because there was no railing and we opened up this middle space just to make it a little more light. But these were the original probably kitchen cabinets, which had been painted and painted and painted, so I sort of stripped them back a little, cleaned them up, but essentially we kept as many things of this room as possible. Then behind me and all the way around the room, this is where we kind of put a lot of the artwork that we collect from trips and journeys and our pasts and gifts from people. None of it is particularly valuable. It's more to do with who gave it to us or who painted it and where it came from. So pieces we find at the thrift store, a friend who draws amazingly and did a little illustration of us on a zebra. My friend Mark Milroy, who's an amazing painter, who makes these sort of snake and feet drawings. Also, this is an amazing artist called Sol Lashinsky, who we found a whole portfolio of his work at the flea market in New York and bought a lot of his pieces. So there's a lot of his work here. Certain things we find, this crazy old still life that somebody painted, and we found it at like a garage sale for like $2. But it is a big mixture. And then we then mix this up. Some of these things are collected. The stools came from Sicily, but through a friend in Provincetown. The rug is one of 3 that Layleen, my partner, and I carried back from a trip with J. Crew that we were on and rushed through customs as fast as possible so that they wouldn't question what they were. So it's a very, very eclectic room and full of a lot of history and memories for the two of us. We have a crazy collection of pottery. Some of it is mine. So this odd little tippy top vase that I designed, so you can use it both ways. So it's a vessel for either flowers, however you want to have it. And the little dish is a new piece of mine that's going to be a new collection that's going to come out probably in the fall. Then some of these things are just the crazy things we found. We found this piece in Palm Springs. I have no idea who it's by, unfortunately. This piece, we were at a country fair up here in Sullivan County, and this one ceramicist, every other piece they made was like the most smooth and perfect bowl, like these perfectly perfect, admirable pieces of ceramic. And then there was this. And of course, that was the piece that I liked. And in my head, I thought, what kind of trauma did you have that day? That was the piece that you decided to make. It's completely covered in spikes. And it's really a really amazing piece. And again, they were really surprised that we wanted to buy it because it was nothing like anything else. This is one of the only pieces, this very strange terracotta pot, which is covered in lichen, is actually a piece that I carried with me on the aeroplane when I first moved to the United States. So I've had this since like 1996, and I carried it on my lap on the plane. This is what we call the side porch. It's actually probably where, when this house was its grand first iteration, they probably had a couple of people that worked here, and this was probably their little sort of the trades entrance, because it went straight into the kitchen and the storerooms. We tend to use it as our sort of post-dinner place to hang out. It's usually full of plants, as you can see. As the summer goes on, they get taller and taller and taller. It's also a place that I come and hang. I love this Adirondack chair. I found this up here. It's been painted a number of different colors by me. It's now a home to a bit of one of my textile pieces. But this is my place at the end of the evening to come sit. Because you're a little low down, nobody from the street can really see you. And so this is the place that I sit with a glass of wine at the end of the evening. There's all these pretty like lights in here. We have like the table lamp lit. And it's just a kind of nice place to wind up at the end of the night before you go to bed. I am a slight plant obsessive person, or plant obsessive person, as we say in my country. What I tend to do is buy a lot of these variously bright and crazy geraniums and pelargoniums. I try to keep them alive all through the winter. I'm very fortunate that I have a greenhouse that I built out in the garden. And so my friends and neighbors and anybody that's passing by the house usually gets the task in the wintertime of trudging through the snow and going down to the greenhouse and checking that everything's still alive, and watering things if I want them to. And so I overwinter everything. They seem to do quite well. Then as the summer progresses, these will sometimes change. I'll put these outside, and then we often will have crazy cherry tomato plants in here, or depending on whatever's in bloom at the time. So this becomes a bit of a jungle out here, but it's kind of a nice place to be. Even when it's raining, you can be surrounded by flowers and color. So the house was built around 1830, as far as we can tell, and it was designed by quite a prominent family in the village who built this house, and it was around half the size that it is now. They added a wing on at a later date. I strongly believe that somebody had seen a really beautiful colonial farmhouse with columns and balustrade and all these things, and they knew that that's what they wanted the house to look like on the outside. But I don't think they had ever been inside a house that looked like that. So when you walk into the house, there's a certain farmhouse sort of simplicity to everything. Like there's only one room in the house that has any moldings, but everything else is very plank, board. It's like old plaster work. It's very simply built, and you can tell that it's built from materials that are very close by. There's nothing fancy. There's no plaster work really or anything like that. When we started renovating the house, the main thing that I wanted to do when we first got it was to make sure it didn't burn down, fall down, or flood, because nothing, as I said, had been updated. This entire back section of the house had, without a lie, one light bulb and one switch, which was a push button, which I was always terrified I was going to electrocute myself when I pushed it. And other crazy things, the dining room, which we'll see later, when you open the door to the dining room, there was a green canoe that somebody had left in the house, and it fit diagonally from one corner to the other corner, completely just in the room. And that was obviously the space that they thought was a really good place to put a canoe. So a lot of the work entailed discovery. So the gallery leads through into our very long dining room. This was probably an addition from around 1890, when the people that owned the house decided that a really good money spinner was to add this wing to the house. There's a big history up here of bluestone mining, and so the quarrymen who would come in seasonally to work needed somewhere to stay. And so they tacked on this very, very extravagant long dining room, which is still our dining room, and leads to the new kitchen, which has a little hutch opening that we'll show you, so they could serve through food to the guys that were staying here. It's the room where we peeled back probably 3/8 of an inch of wallpaper that had been layered and layered and layered and layered and layered. And then when we peeled it off, it came up in huge pieces, which was great. And this is what was underneath. So we sanded it a little bit and sealed it, but this is the original colors of the house, which is pretty cool to keep. The floor had black tar paper on it, but it's the original planks, so we peeled all that off, which took quite a while, and polished the floors. But this is the room where we really entertain. We have had 25 people sitting at this table. We've had great weekend parties here. It's sort of really I suppose this is really the hub of the house. This is where people tend to gather in the mornings for coffee. We sit around the table and discuss. People can work on their laptops or read books, etc. And this is also the room that has the most beautiful light throughout the day. It faces south, so we get sun in this room nearly all day long. The plants love it, as you can see in the windows. And it's decorated in a very crazy mixed style. These crazy paper lanterns are, I believe, French. They come from my friend John Darien's store in New York City. And I'm sure for some people they're a Christmas decoration, but for me they're an all-the-time decoration, because why not? Then on this wall, these were my great-grandmother's terrible willow pattern china. They are awful. They're terribly made. And my grandfather always used to say he would never drink out of the cups because he said it was like drinking out of a vase because they have these tiny little handles on them and they're useless. But anyway, the plates themselves make a really good display. So we have this crazy organic wall of these, plus a portrait of the drag queen and performer Dina Martina, a little fornacetti, and then this is a plate that I found at an antique store, and I think it's Irish. But it's very, very old, and we can never quite work out what it is, but it's one of my favorite pieces. A portrait of me by my friend Mark Milroy when I was a little less gray and a little more brunette. He's painted about 3 or 4 portraits of me, but I'm not that much of an egomaniac, so you just get the one. This is another great thing that we were given, and it's a strange story. A lady who's one of the daughters of the homeowners that lived here from 1932, Linda, who I adore, who still lives up here sometimes. One day she said to me, "Oh, I'm clearing out my house to sell, and I have something of yours from the house." And I was intrigued. She came over and she said, "Actually, all these textiles were found in the house when we first got the house. So these are all patchwork pieces that somebody who lived in the house a very long time ago had put together. I have yet to work out quite what to do with them, but they are very old and not in the least bit creepy. They're kind of amazing things, but I've yet to work out. So they're sitting on the yellow chairs while we work out what to do with them. Other than that, in here we have this great long table. It's actually 2 picnic tables. I do not mind that at all. They're very practical. I painted them grey and joined them together, and it's great because you can fit in as many people as you want around the table. The ceramics are crazy collections of a little piece by Kay, things that we found at fairs, some candles that we found in Portugal, this amazing candle store that makes these pomegranates. A perfect place to talk about entertaining is standing next to one of our bars. I confess we have 2. We have been known in the past to have these really big weekend parties where we invite a lot of our friends. I think the most we've hosted here is around 25 people to stay for the weekend. And we're not the easiest hosts. You don't get to just turn up. We tend to give people themes and costumes, and people have to come with their wits about them. We have other friends who are very sweet and make spreadsheets of chores for people to do when they're here. I'm a little bit more like, can somebody do the washing up, or I'll cook the meal. But we have had a lot of really great events here. And we always end up like piling out into the garden and sort of singing and carousing and what have you. The neighbors sometimes do think we're about to start a commune. We have told them that's not the case, but you know, I think it's more entertaining for all of our neighbors and people in the village. I tend to collect a very mixed bag of artwork and ceramics and objects. And so in the dining room, these are these very sort of quaint little 1960s tile work pieces that we found. no pedigree, no idea who they're by. This little hair has a strange story. It has the initials of SK on the top of it, and it's a little napkin ring with a hair. And this was in the roof of our house. And the Kellums, which is what the K stands for, they were the people that built the house originally. But this was tucked into a rafter in the attic, and I have no idea how it got up there. Maybe it got lost and rolled, or some animal moved it. But anyway, that's original to the house. This is a little picture of the house. Probably it's around like 1880, 1890. And this is the original family that built the house, and all the relatives, because this is a lot of house for people to live in. So this is the Kellums. And you can see a little closely, there's a lot of shotguns and a lot of pride going on in this picture. But it was given to me, again, by a local lady who found this. And so I've kept it in the house as a little reminder of who's walked the halls and walked the boards of the house. My design style is very apparent in this house. I have a very strong sense of history, and I think that's to do with my upbringing in the UK. A lot of older British houses, you'll see when you look at stately homes, people don't throw things away. People love to layer things, or people don't see the need to throw everything out and start again. And I think that my design sense is a little bit like that. I like the layering, and I tend to take a bit of joy in imperfection and a happy accident. So a lot of the colors on the walls and the textures in the papers are things that I may have seen somewhere else, like a scrap of fabric or a wood chip on a wall or something like that. And they tend to inform then what the colors are in the house. Some of them even we've sort of discovered underneath layers, and we've suddenly realized, oh, that's actually what the house was originally. So some of it's a little bit found, but generally speaking, I do like a very sort of eclectic mixed style. And I think growing up in the UK as well, you get a certain confidence that you can mix things together because you tend to see it more often. As I said, in like country estates and houses, where when I was a kid at school, that was the outing, that was the day out with school, and you would get dragged around these massive stately homes. And I think on some level it starts to kind of stick with you. So this is our little galley kitchen. I call it a galley kitchen because I think for a lot of people this room would be 3 times as big. But I like to cook a lot, so I don't mind having my odd appliances out here and there. This was probably the 3rd kitchen in the house because they moved it 3 times. And this, I think, was the kitchen they tacked on at the end of the construction of the house in around 1890. And you'll see it has this little window that leads through into the dining room. This was completely covered up when we got the house. Somebody had wallpapered over it on both sides, but there was a strange little shelf sticking out, and I was a little perplexed as to why. And so on tapping it, it was still 3/8 of an inch thick with wallpaper, but the void was still there. So we just opened it up. We never use it to serve anything through, but it's a really good way of shouting at people when they're, when you want to call them in for dinner, when they've had cocktails or they're in the garden. The cabinetry my dad made with me. My dad is still with us. He's like 92 now. But I would bring him over from the UK, and he would say, well, what can I help you with? And then we would walk through the house, and we'd go up to the attic or in the basement, and there were all these pieces that over the years they had moved and just put them downstairs or upstairs. They didn't need them anymore. So these great big mahogany planks were in the basement, which is amazing. Completely covered in dust. I had no idea what they were until I started sanding them. And then he built me all these cabinets. The shelving is, again, me being very practical. I kind of like to see what I have. And this is just basically where we make all our food, hang out, have coffee in the morning. I'm a little bit of a coffee devotee, so I have my little coffee maker. A rather gigantic stove, which gets a lot of use. Again, I found this up here in a store where they specialized in like green demolitions. And this was in its original packing case, never been used, and not the cost it should be, which is a great thing. This table is from a Jewish school, and there's traditionally a lot of summer camps up here for the Jewish community, and this had been an art school desk where people painted. When I got it, it had a tar paper top to it, which we took off, but in detail, if you look very, very closely, there are all the names of the students scratched into it in places. And it's kind of charming. So I left all those. We just gave it a quick coat of paint. And it's the place where all the cooking happens, basically, in the house. The rug on the floor, another one from a trip to Morocco. Thank you, US Customs, because we got it through without anybody saying anything. And then this room also leads out to the garden. This is where the dogs go out in the morning, and I wander around, even when it's snowing. Have a little pantry, I suppose, mainly because the two things that I don't really ever want to look at is a refrigerator and a dishwasher. I don't particularly like dishwashers, but I'm married to somebody who does. So we have it. I just tucked it around the corner, and the fridge is on the other side. We quite often get asked by people, like, why do you have this really fancy stove and then you have a really basic refrigerator? The main reason being is we're a little far out into the woods up here, and you can't get anybody to come and fix anything that's fancy. So I tended to buy the cheapest fridge that I could. It works perfectly well. It's not the star of the show, and that's fine with me. Sometimes the house sort of tells you what it wants to be. And so there have been certain colors that we have found scraps of behind a cabinet you take off the wall. And one of the colors that we found was this crazy, almost chartreusey green. And it's on the ceiling in the dining room. I repainted it, but I swear to you, it's the same color that was there. I just literally redid it. And then when we came to this room, originally, this room was black. This sounds crazy. This room had been painted black. So all the cabinets were black, the walls were painted black, and the floor was black linoleum. And under the black linoleum was this floor, which is kind of great. It's a maple floor. It still has all the marks from the nails, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. And you can see where originally there had been a really big potbelly stove here, and there's the burn marks in the floor to prove it, and Ivo sitting in the way, as he tends to do. But the green we just brought into here as well, so it's on the ceiling in the other room, but then we used it for the trim in here, because it was white when we first painted it, and I was like, it's a little boring for us. So a little bit of a nod to the colors I tend to like, so this came in. And then we had, this was all originally the same white planking, and we had a friend come to stay with us who was an amazing cook and didn't also quite understand ventilation. And even though I had told him many times, we have a huge hood, you can vent the stove if it gets too hot, he decided in the middle of the winter to open the kitchen window. We left after the weekend and came back to discover that all the pipes had frozen in the back of the house. And I walked into the kitchen to a very attractive waterfall flowing from the ceiling above. And so this wall was completely destroyed. And so we took the opportunity really to change it out. And we found these really beautiful sort of robin egg blue tiles, which I've laid actually with no grouting, because I tend to just like it very close together, just a personal preference. And so that's really how the kitchen ended up being the way it is. Funnily enough, the one thing that also happened was with the flood, certain pieces of the floor completely sprung up, completely got destroyed. And I had to go on a very deep dive search to try and find exactly the same width of board, which was very, very hard. And in the end, I found somebody on Marketplace who was taking up the floor in an old bowling alley, and the floors were identical. So somebody in Pennsylvania has exactly the same floor as I do. So I ended up having them FedEx me 7 planks of wood to repair the floor. And you actually can't really tell which is the old and which is the... But they're from the same time period. I think you can just about see it here, but it's the same wood, essentially. So that's our kitchen. The one thing that I wanted in buying a house up here was some land. I come from a whole family of gardeners, and we're slightly fanatical about our outside spaces. And this property, I was at first a little like, doesn't have a great deal of garden. And when we first got the house, it was bad grass right up to the house, all the way around it. There was nothing else other than 3 old pine trees and 3 really old trees at the front that overlook the street. And so everything that you'll see is my sort of version of, I suppose it's a little bit like an English garden, but in upstate New York. So I tend to like very layered things. I don't like things that are super controlled. There are no clipped hedges. There's no real borders. Everything is sort of a little chaotic in a good way. It's sort of controlled chaos. So I tend to plant things and I have structure, and then there's a point where the summer becomes full, you know, the days are long, and I tend to just let the garden do what it's going to do. And what I find by doing that, which I think also informs the way I tend to decorate and style things, you get these combinations of flowers and blooms and plants that you would never have planned to put together, but nature just decides it's going to do its own thing. And so you end up with these very interesting combinations of texture and plant, and some things are too big and some things shouldn't be there, but actually nature has an amazing way of creating a little harmony in that chaos. So usually by the end of September, I just kind of put my hands up and let it do its thing. And then, you know, winter comes and it all gets chopped back and clipped away, and it starts again in the spring. So this is a little bit of the garden. This is what we call the side garden. It's off the dining room. You're a bit early in the year. Usually it's a lot more full, but spring is really pretty here. Everything's just starting to fill in. So you get all these forget-me-nots, which self-seed wherever they feel like it, and I just let them do it. So this garden starts off in all these very sort of pale colors with the red tulips, and then as the season goes on, it just gets a little wilder and wilder. So by high summer, these beds are as tall as me and full of color, like a lot of color. And I mix everything together and let things intertwine and grow however they want to. And this, again, this is a really sunny side of the house. So this tends to be where, if we have a dinner party, this will be where people also come outside, because it's so nice out here in the summer months. This is our little back staircase, which I'm very fond of. Again, I think this is another addition. When the stairs to nowhere ceased to function, they put in this little staircase. It's very rickety and very shallow, but I like the fact that it's hidden. This is the original paint that we found, and I did discover after a while, I was looking at the marks on this door and where the locks are, and I realized that this door used to be there, going out to the side porch, and at some point somebody thought, we need some light in here. So they just repurposed it and shoved it on here. I like a bit of recycling and upgrading. So the stairs are very narrow. They were not this crazy blue color. That's a Martin addition. And it is so narrow and there's no railing. So I did put in this rope banister. And then I found all this crazy rope trim in a store. It's antique. And I thought, oh, well, it's a theme. So that's what we did. So as I was saying, the blue stairs are very much my creation. This was a bit of kind of a nice but very uninteresting space, and it doesn't get a great deal of light. So we just figured, well, we'll just go with some really rich color. The artwork here, these are a bunch of scraps by the photographer Jack Pearson. We went to a gallery opening of his in Provincetown, and as part of the show, he had a table in the very center of the room full of offcuts and scraps and pieces of his photography that he decided weren't quite right, or they were color tests. And you were encouraged to then take pieces that you liked. And so at the time, my partner and I put together this little this little grouping, and we got it framed. And it's not a real 100% one Jack Pearson photograph. It's a collection of like 7 or 8 little pieces. The other pieces up here, again, a little bit of a flea market find. We found a portfolio by this chap, Simietin, and these are these crazy color stories that he did, and we just were really drawn to them, and so we framed them up here in these white frames. What's wrong, Ivo? My little dog is barking at us. Doesn't like me. And then we have this really crazy long corridor. At one end of the corridor is our bedroom and bathroom that we carved out of 4 or 5 rooms, but I'll show you when we get in there. And then this leads down to the other end. This whole hallway, again, was designed for miners and quarrymen to rent while they were up here working seasonally. So it's a little rabbit warren of tiny rooms. Some of them I've sort of split up or reconfigured. This was the only part of the house that had a slightly odd energy when we got the house. So not that I'm a big proponent of woo-woo things, but we moved things around a little bit and it actually seemed to improve how it feels up here, which is quite nice. So the blue hallway leads into what is our primary bedroom. This room is such a labor of love. This room had been split up into 4 rooms. And my friend Linda, who used to live there when she was a child, referred to this as the sweat room because she and her sister used to share this room when it was about 1/3 of the size. And apparently it used to get rather really, really hot. It still is one of the warmest rooms in the house. I think it's just the aspect that it gets the morning sun over here from the front, and then the sun gradually wraps around all through the day and ends up into the bathroom. But we split it all up. I took a lot of time with friends working out which walls we could take down without the ceiling falling in. But beneath us are the stairs to nowhere. And those stairs that we saw downstairs basically would have come up right here. So they obviously were no longer useful. So that's why they were blocked off. This room is painted this crazy shiny dark green. I traumatized my husband partner, Laylene, doing this because it's incredibly shiny and you have to paint very, very quickly and follow each other around the room. So it has this very high sort of gloss finish. I didn't want it super flat because the house doesn't really feel like that. It's a little more of a toothy house, so you get a little texture in the paint, which I quite like. The quilt on the bed is from a photograph by my good friend and collaborator, Patricia Heel. We have a whole series of artwork together that you'll see in the studio. These are all flowers that I grew in my garden. And then the fabric backgrounds are things that I painted for the photography that then a couple of friends in the design business said, "What's that fabric? What's that fabric? Why don't you make these?" Thank you, Michael Shome of AD, who pointed that out to me, and it's your fault that I'm now making all these things. So we made this really big tapestry from one of the images. You can see it also on the bed pillows, the same sort of ideas and stripes. The painting above the bed is a strange thing. I actually painted it for a photo shoot where we needed a piece of artwork. And the colors were described to me, what they wanted, and that was the end of it. So I painted this on my friend's floor in their beach house over 2 nights. And then after the shoot, it just ended up on the wall. And it's great. And we just leave it here. Other pieces of artwork in here are by Hugo Guinness, a tiny aquatint of my mom when she was a little girl, very blonde hair. Various pieces that we found at the flea market. The drapery, again, came from a photo shoot. It's made by a company that no longer exists called Beacon Hill. And, but they fit perfectly, so why am I going to buy new curtains when they fit? Another one of my husband's plants that we try and keep going. It tends to want to have 3 leaves at a time, and that's it, but we're okay with that. This piece of artwork came from the Land Gallery, which is an amazing organization that helps and supports artists with special needs. They are given a safe space in which to create whatever they want. and there is something extraordinarily bonkers about this picture. The fact that she is called Crystal Celeste Van Buren, I have no idea why she's called this, with her rather great fro, and her sort of bindi mark in her forehead and this slightly manic smile. But it's not everybody's choice to have at the foot of your bed, but it's we kind of think it's quite funny, and we kind of love her. I think she's looking over us, keeping us safe. The other little paintings are studies by my friend Mark Milroy. He did a whole series of these like strange Punch and Judy puppets in still lives. They're very strange. They're like little feet. He's slightly obsessed with feet. The snake painting downstairs. The rug, we were very lucky. There was a big store that went out of business in New York City, and a friend of ours who was working there at the time just said, you should buy this. It's a really great rug. It makes absolutely no sense in the space at all, but it kind of makes us happy. Other little finds, portraits of my family, a crazy teddy bear made out of Pendleton fabric with jewelry and a mask on, and this crazy lady, who I think originally was a pair, but we could only find one, and we made this slightly bonkers fringe lampshade to go with it. So this is our rather extravagant primary bathroom, which I have to confess was 2 rooms, and I knocked it through and turned it into our bathroom because we have the space, and you know it's kind of a really nice room to have. We have this very nice bathtub, which my plumber was convinced was going to go through the floor, and it did not. There's odd little bits of artwork here. Some of the crazy egg paintings are by me. The ceramics here are again by Matthew Solomon, and I really feel like you can really see his work here really beautifully. Like, I'm obsessed by the amount of work that goes into something like this. The cabinet was one of those finds that I found in a barn. It was not designed for a sink, but it's just a perfect thing. I'm not a great fan of shop-bought pieces, so this worked out really well, and we just stuck a sink on the top. Similarly, the chest of drawers with the crazy horn. This is another piece by the ceramicist Matthew Solomon. Again, incredibly intricate. I am slightly in awe of his work, which is why I have a lot of it. And then other than that in here, this room, again, is that room where I didn't pick the color. The ceiling was this slightly strange mint green, and the walls were this very strange brown. And I just thought, well, it's not broke, so let's not reinvent it. And we went to the paint store and had them remake the paint, and they thought I was strange. But the strange thing is I've discovered that all these things kind of obviously sit in my color bank memory. And so when I've been working on my fabric designs, they have become the colors of nearly everything. And you can see it in this little bit of fabric we have draped up here. And you'll see it in some of the ceramics as well. My background is based from my art education. I then went on to study interior design, and I realized quite quickly that I did not like it. So strangely, I then segued into being an interior stylist, which is the main thing that people know me for. But also using my arts background, I design and collaborate to make fabrics, photography, and now I'm making ceramics as well. My ceramic work began, other than my dabbling with it in college, through meeting a few different people up here in Sullivan County. One person, Matthew Solomon, who's was an amazing ceramicist, and we have a lot of pieces around the house that were made by him. And also I was lucky enough to meet a ceramicist, Kay Schuttgart, who I really liked the simplicity of her work, and we then decided upon a small collaboration, which was really a good springboard for me to learn techniques and for me to find out what I did and did not like. And the main thing that we discovered was I have a great love for texture and color and pattern, which she did not. So all of her pieces are gray, but all my pieces that you'll see during the house tour are very colorful with texture, and they have a kind of a sort of historic patina to all of them. Continuing the strange Martin Bourne color combinations of paint. We're going to walk through this very narrow hallway, which we kind of carved out of these 4 rooms that the primary bedroom came out of. And we made a corridor to connect the back and the house because there wasn't one. So you had to go all the way through the house and come up the stairs to come to the back of the house. So we cut this corridor through. But this leads through to my studio. It's my little quiet, safe space where it's mine. So come and have a look. The strange apricot hallway with a slightly odd greeny brown trim. But I love this room a lot. This is one of my favorite rooms in the house. So this is my studio. It was 2 rooms. And there was a point where I realized, I don't think we need all these bedrooms. So I wanted a space where I could make and think and work. It's a really, really nice space in the winter because I have this really great little stove up here. The room's heated, but there's something really lovely about having flame. So it's a little log stove. And then this room, basically, a friend of mine refinished the walls. They were really great. They were the original plaster walls of the house. But they had a slightly strange color. They were this very slightly sickly, yellowy cream color, and not one of my favorites. And so this is probably the only room that I've sort of tweaked a little bit. So we made it this sort of soft lavendery gray, but just by painting layers of paint over the top. And this is the place where all of the creative things happen. So I paint up here, I read up here, we do shoots up here with my friend Patricia Heel. And you can see some of the things we worked on together. So this whole sort of series, or all of this, started because we wanted to take pictures of all the flowers that I grow in the garden, because I tend to grow things that aren't particularly normal or come from a big box store. And so we just started working out ways of shooting it. So I ended up painting pieces of fabric to make as the backgrounds. Her work is very dark and moody and beautiful. And then while I was painting all the fabrics, I would like leave them around and take pictures and share them with people. And so many people said, "Oh my gosh, are you making fabric?" And I was sort of, no, not really. I mean, I have a textile background, but it wasn't something I intended to do. Anyway, having said that, we made a whole series of images of the flowers, of which there are a lot on my site, but we're also going to have a show later this year in New York City, which will be a celebration of her and my work. This is some of my fabric as we've used as the mats for these. And then this sort of ties then into all the ceramics that I also make. So I started off by making a series with a friend collaborator, and then that's now segued into this. So these are all kind of test pieces, and I'm still working on them. Some of them are available to buy, but we're then working towards a whole series of sort of a big blue story, which I'm kind of working on as we speak. But it will take me a little while. Some of these pieces on this end of the table are purely like inspiration. Like this fabric is incredible. It's indigo, it's Chinese, and this was a piece of fabric that you would wrap around a child. It's like a little swaddling blanket, but it's so intricate and beautifully printed. And it's, again, very me. It's made of 2 different weird little pieces sewn together. But I do love all this sort of indigo and the marks from it. This is a little test piece of mine with this sort of similar indigo glaze. But a lot of these things are just things that I really enjoy the texture of, that I kind of bring into my own work. Not to go on about the same person, but this is probably one of my favorite things. This is, again, by Matthew Solomon, and it's somewhere between a heart and a pine cone and honeycomb, and it has all this texture, and I love his detail of the leaves with the holes and the twigs, and it does absolutely nothing other than sit and be an object, but it's one of my favorite things. So in here, I sketch, I make my fabric pieces, I paint a lot of these papers. to then inspire both the fabric and then the glazes for the pieces. There's my cabinet, which is full of glaze. Some of them I make myself, and they're all about layering and putting things together. And then little tests and little piles of fabrics, but it's all a very inspiring space. There's a little collection of candlesticks that I'm making on the stove. This is kind of the hub of it on this end of the table, which is a strange little detail, but I spend a lot of time making tests of different glazes. So all of these are combinations of glazes that I really like, and these will be things that then work their way into all of this work, which are new shapes for me. Some of it's still in test form, but these are all going to be things that ultimately will get glazed in crazy colors, and will be sort of a new collection I'm going to probably launch in September. I think my favorite thing about this house is the connectivity between all the spaces. One of the things we did discover with the house is that how the previous owners had split up space or created views and vistas is really, really nice. And there's some really quirky things. Like we, I think, removed at least 4 doors all the way through the house, just so that you get a better flow of light and space. And it's really nice to catch glimpses of other rooms. So one of the things I do really love about the house are all the little vistas that you see. So as I was saying, the back of the house was very much a practical space for them to rent small rooms. So this is the first room on the landing. And it has a very strange thing that we have never quite worked out. It's square on the inside and it's curved on the outside. So the wall has this very strange curve, and there's no reason why it does it at all. But our friend who used to live here when she was a little girl, the lady that gave me the fabrics downstairs, still talks about this room and how it's a very strange little room at the top of the stairs. But it's funny enough, one of our best friends, Jenny, it's her favorite room in the house. It's her little bedroom. And so then you can see the room. It's very simple. It was the most appalling color when we got the house. There's not even a good word to describe the color, but it was a very dark, brownish olive color. And it was so dark. And so we just ended up painting all of it the same color. Now people tend to say this expression I don't love called color drenching, which is not quite what I think it is. It's just painting it all one color. Keep it simple. This is a little corner room. It's very sweet. I know why Jenny likes it as well, because it feels very contained. So it just has one little window and the door, and it feels very safe and secure in here. But it has really nice light in the morning. So the hallway continues with another teeny tiny bedroom, which is very cute. I tend to find people love these little rooms. I think they feel very cozy. And we have lots of really great blankets and bedding to keep everybody cozy in the winter time. Nice in the summer as well, because it's really the quiet side of the house. It's far away from the road and other people. So there's this little room. And then moving down to the end, if I didn't have my primary bedroom, this would be the other bedroom I would really like to have. It's extremely sweet. I love it a lot. The 4-poster in this room is a French campaign bed. I bought it from a store in New York a long time ago. It's the most irritating size. Nothing fits it. So I had to have a special sort of futon / mattress made for it. People are always slightly nervous that it's going to fall apart on them, but actually it's an extremely comfortable bed. And it has, when you're in bed, it has the most beautiful view out across the garden in the summer. This is another room where I repainted it, but I didn't paint it. This was the color that the ceiling was, and this is the color that the walls were. So all I did was go and buy new paint and had them color match it, which I think the paint store thought was a little odd. The other thing we have a tendency of doing is keeping houseplants really alive. This crazy soup is the home of a little pink princess plant, which everybody finds really difficult to grow. But for some reason in this house, You cut pieces off and put them in water, and they just grow. So we could have a plant store sale on the side if we wanted to, but this is another thing. We had one of these and now we have about 7 of them. I think the word home to me is a place where you can truly decide to be yourself. You're not in any way in public, you're not in society, you're in your own space. And I think therefore home is a place that reflects exactly who you are. And I always think it should not reflect what other people think it should be or you should be.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.